Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this City Council Housing Workshop meeting to order. At this time, I yield to Councilmember Carlson to welcome today's guest for our invocation.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I have the pleasure to introduce a friend of everybody. Sorry, I ran up the stairs here. Linda Salsenet, who sat up here. You probably helped design this, didn't you? Did you help design this room? And her fingerprints and touch are all over Tampa. She served 5 terms on Tampa City Council, 4 were citywide. You also served as chair?
Yes.
More than once?
Once.
Once, okay. And she's currently the advocacy chair for the Center for Architecture and Design. She writes for Creative Loafing and co-chairs the Preservation Roundtable. She also is a member of Congregation Rodo Shalom.
Share Zedek.
Oh, Share Zedek. Sorry, I thought you said, okay. Share Zedek. I went to her daughter's bat mitzvah at Rodo, right? Okay, we'll welcome Linda and ask her to give us a prayer, and then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
Let us be still. Thank you for letting me start today with you. As council members, you face a full day of serving our community. Those of us in the audience are deeply grateful to you and our city staff for devoting your energy to improving Tampa. I completely understand the patience, time, and thought you bring to your job as council members. It is not easy. By carefully listening to our neighbors and each other, you can create together better policies and directions for us all. You are all artisans, crafting public policy which shapes our town. Be thoughtful and careful as you mold the rules which direct our future. Today, let us share our light.
Thank you very much. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Also, this morning, I would like to highlight that we have several members of our AHAC board, our Affordable Housing Advisory Committee here. And if they could, for just a moment, come up and introduce themselves.
Sure, let's do roll call and we'll go
Okay,
back to it.
yeah,
Roll
sorry.
Carlson? Hurtak? Here. Glendenin?
Here.
Henderson?
Present.
Vieira?
Here.
Miranda?
Here.
Maniscalco?
Here.
We have physical quorum.
All right, AHAC board members, come on up if you'd like and introduce yourself. Yes, ma'am.
And if you could just introduce yourselves and say how you're involved in affordable housing so that our board knows the depth of the knowledge of our board.
Okay, my name is Jenny Hall. I'm in my 2nd term on the AHAC committee, and my role is I am a citizen of the great city of Tampa.
She's also a wonderful realtor, so.
Thank you.
Good morning, Harry Hedges, Chairman of AHAC. It's my honor to serve in that position for a number of years now. Past president of the State Association of Housing Finance Authorities. I've been involved in affordable housing from the first time the city started it many years ago. To be part of where we have come today is an honor to serve you in our city. Thank you.
Good morning, council members. Russ Versace. I've been on AHAC for a little over 7 years, and my position in there is as a builder and of affordable and market rate housing.
Good morning, Sean Wilson, president of Blue Sky Communities, and I'm an affordable housing developer, as most of you know. Our company has been around for coming up on 12 years. I've been doing this job for coming up on 32 years all around the state of Florida. And we have an affordable housing community under construction right now at the corner of Nebraska and Bush. And thank you very much for your support on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So as we go into this housing workshop, this meeting that we're having today, it says here on the agenda, public comment. But the staff has a very lengthy presentation discussing goals and ideas and, in regards to housing in general in the city of Tampa. So I was going to ask council, do we hear and see the presentation first and then go to public comment so we can see what's being put on the table? Or any other suggestions? Councilmember Hurtak, Councilmember Carlson.
I believe that Mr. Drumgo is going to talk about that, and as all of us have had a chance to see the presentation already, there's built-in Q&A spots that he said would be for both council questions and public comment, if I remember that correctly, Mr. Drumgo.
Can I say something for?
Sure.
We received that presentation. I know the staff worked a long time on it. We received it Wednesday afternoon, late Wednesday afternoon. Like the rest of you, I spent the last 36 or so hours reading it 3 times, spent a couple hours talking on the phone with staff, called as many housing experts as I could. This is probably the most complete housing report that's ever been given to the city. It's woefully incomplete. It has a lot of issues with it, and at the end of it, we're being asked to make decisions today. And so I had proposed that we put the goal setting at the beginning because the goal should drive the presentation. We've all read the presentation. The public needs to see the presentation. Many people in the public have seen it. But we need to come up with strategic housing solutions, and we need to do things differently than the past. One thing we're doing differently is we're putting more money than we ever had before. We've been getting emails about 18 million. I think the total we're proposing today is 100 million, where 3 years ago the money was 5 million, and before that, 0. So this is a significant step that the city council is taking forward. We need to be good custodians of that money, and I think we need to talk about goals before we get into it, because there's a lot of old thinking in this presentation that's based on what the city has been doing before, and we need to think about what we can do to really impact helping people in our community. There's a great need in our community, as we've heard over and over again from the community, and we have to figure out how do we use, even with 100 million, the most the city's ever spent, probably more than the county's ever spent, we have to figure out how to be good custodians of that money so that we can have the greatest impact possible. Thank you.
Councilmember Clendenin, Henderson.
If it's the pleasure of council, because Chairman, I believe she posed a question, and so if you'll acknowledge,
If you would like to answer the
Chairman, if I
question.
can.
Yeah.
The workshop, I'm going to withdraw my comments.
Thank you.
All right.
I turned on my light first.
Okay, Councilmember Henderson, Clendenin, Miranda.
Yeah, good morning. I appreciate Councilman Carlson's comments, but that doesn't mean that they apply to the entire board. I know that our staff has worked, even prior to me getting on council, a very long time on this report. It was asked of you to present it, so we cannot make decisions about it in advance of your presentation. I think that would be very unfair and undeserving of the staff who worked so hard on this. So I would like to hear from staff in its totality about what they presented. I don't want to make a decision that is incomplete or incomprehensive. That's unfair to you as the experts in housing. I definitely would like to hear from them first before we set goals.
All right, Clendenin, Miranda, Vieira.
And I'm somewhere in the middle of what was just said. I concur with Councilman Carlson that, and I know you've heard me say this before as far as responsibilities and expectations and, and setting that as far as what I'm afraid of is the presentation kind of sets the table before we have that discussion and sets expectations or basically that sets the standard or whatever it is we're looking at. And I know I personally have some comments that I would like to make as we steer this in a direction of, one, what our goals are as a city as far as accommodating housing, versus what we're currently doing, what our potential pitfalls are, and and the types of folks that we need to be serving. So I mean, I kind of want to. I think council should have an opportunity to kind of steer that direction, and then hear from staff, and then maybe staff's presentation can adapt the presentation to fit kind of what they hear from the dais.
All right, Miranda and then Vieira.
Thank you very much. I agree with the 3 council members who spoke before I. And they're just divided into 3 areas: construction, finance, and land leases. And we've only had a day or a day and a half to review all this. And when you review it with just 7 council members, I don't think any one of us is an expert on all the areas. Combined, maybe we can handle 1 area or 2 areas. This is something that is taken out of the norm because we live in an abnormal society today. Everything comes with higher prices, and the further you get behind, you can't make them. You can't make your payment on a lot of things. So we have to realistically work out what we can do and what we cannot do. And today, what we talked today about construction costs on one side, tomorrow's a little bit higher. And when you talk about buying land, you're gonna ask one question: where are you gonna buy it at? How many lots are for sale? Who are we competing against? The private sector. Are we strong enough to compete against the public sector? These are the things that I'm interested in, so I can try to alleviate the problems that we're facing, so that we can have construction, we can find the financing, and where are those that are much greater than us in building affordable housing, like the Housing Authority? And I'm not blaming them, let me get that out of the way. But have we made some inroads with them? I don't know. Have we done things to alleviate the congestion that we have today in affordable housing? We made some inroads. Some developers are giving 5 and 10% of affordable housing in their units because this council asked for that. And these are the things that we have to evaluate. This is not going to be solved in one day. It's presented in one day or one hearing in the morning, but this is going to take some time to digest and some time to come up with answers. So I agree with all 3 of them in different aspects, but I think Carlson and Clendenin have made a point, and so has our great District 5 chairman of CRA. So these are the things that I'm willing to listen to and see how we can work it out. But this has just been with us a day and a half.
All right, Councilman Leo.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, what I suggest is that we just move forward with something like right now. I don't want to have a discussion on what's going to happen and spend 20, 30 minutes talking about that. And I want to be clear, by the way, when Martin Shelby spoke up, I went, it wasn't at you, Mr. Shelby. I want to make sure that it was at the many layers that were going to come up to beginning the meeting. And again, and by the way, so I mean, if Councilman Clendenin talked about having statements before, if we choose to do that, I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, they're limited to 5 minutes, right? We hear from staff, we hear from the public, then we have a substantive discussion, and that's what I would suggest, but that we move forward with whatever we're going to do quickly.
Mr. Drongo.
Well, good morning. For the record, Elise Drumgo, Deputy Administrator for Development and Economic Opportunity. And I hear the council, and I want to first ask the initial question that I was posed. We do have it built into the presentation to allow for Q&A after every section. It's at the pleasure of the chairman to allow for public comment or how you want to guide that discussion. Staff is not here to dictate that process. Relative to the other points about the presentation today, we have been working on this, this presentation for a while now, and we are here because you asked for us to be here, right? You asked for us to come and present on this day, and so that's why we're before you. I think that at the time that the motion was made for us to come in, it was understood that this would be a very heavy discussion. There would be a lot of content, and so we certainly got the presentation out and in your hands to review the content, and it is quite a bit of information. But I want to be clear that there are no decisions to be made today. You all have already made the decisions. You made the decision to vote in favor of the $50 million allocation. You made the decision to vote in favor of allocating 30% of your CRA dollars to affordable housing. You made the decision not to embark upon a plan to pursue rent control when you had a couple of hundred people lined up here for that discussion a couple of years ago. And so we went back, we conducted a housing needs assessment. We're bringing you back a plan today to spend those dollars that is grounded in that data. So we're here for the discussion. We're here to present the information to you this morning. We would love for you to hear us out, and it's at the pleasure of council as to how you achieve that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Drumgo. Yes, ma'am.
So, Mr. Drumgo, from my understanding, the Q&A was, and if it's the pleasure of council, because we have a lot of people here and quite a few housing experts actually as well in the audience today. So I would love to hear from council and from the public at each Q&A break.
That's fine.
But otherwise, If we're going to start with number one, I believe in the motion was a discussion that was going to last no more than 30 minutes.
Okay, for item number one, so I'll kick off that discussion. We can take it to each council member 5 minutes apiece, and then we'll start off from there. So we're here today with this housing workshop that was requested by City Council. Mr. Drumgo already mentioned things that I was going to say, and that is this council have already voted to allocate certain dollars in the millions of dollars, historical millions of dollars, towards housing. A word that I kept hearing over the last few weeks, so don't get amnesia, don't get amnesia. There's no amnesia. We are here to tackle this housing crisis in a responsible way. The Housing Authority was mentioned. You know, they're part of this bigger picture, but here, people have come to the City of Tampa, to the City Council, asking for relief. I've been here my whole life, as I've said many times, and I've never seen this kind of situation in the City of Tampa when it's come to housing. People living in Tampa, people from Tampa, people come in Tampa, it's not sustainable. They can't afford it. We have inflation, we have rising rents, we have rising construction costs, rising real estate values, whatever it is. However, us as the City Council and with the team led by Nicole Travis and Mr. Drumgo and Abby Feely and everybody that's here today, they put together this presentation for us to discuss and have this workshop. My goal is that we invest in alleviating this housing crisis, meaning sustainable, long-term, permanent, affordable housing for people that are in need. This council has, along with the administration, we've worked to set up the housing hotline. We've worked to set up rental assistance over the years. We've looked at down payment assistance. We've discussed rehabilitation, rehab assistance for existing properties that need help. We're trying to do what we can. Somebody mentioned earlier, and I mentioned it the other day, how do we compete against larger corporations that have all the money in the world? We're talking multi-billion-dollar corporations that are coming into this community and buying single-family homes and basically killing the path to the American dream, where they're turning us into rental communities and people don't have that path to buying those homes. I mentioned the other day, for a long time, a house in West Tampa, at least in my youth, from high school to college to not that long ago, $150,000, $130,000, $110,000 for a house, where those houses are $500,000 today. My grandfather's old house that he built for $90,000 is at $850,000, give or take, on Zillow. He couldn't afford it today, and that's my grandfather that worked hard his whole life. This is affecting so many people in the City of Tampa. It's a nationwide issue, but in Tampa, it seems that we're seeing much of the brunt. A lot of people after COVID moved here from other states. We don't have a state income tax. There's a lot of benefits to living in Florida. But at the same time, people in Tampa are being outpriced of their neighborhoods that they've lived in their entire life. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to start down the road with Councilmember Miranda, if you want to say anything as we open this discussion.
No, I think I've said enough.
Thank you very much, sir.
Sure, and I'll give some thoughts. It's funny, I wrote down some thoughts this morning. First off, I think the number one thing I want to say is how much I appreciate the hard work that staff, Nicole Travis and all of her team, Elise, Erica, everybody has put into not just this presentation, but into what I really call a major reform. I wouldn't call it a revolution, but a major reform of City of Tampa policy in working with council and the administration on affordable housing funding. Like the presentation says, before 2020 in the general budget, we had about $2 million going to housing. That has been expanded radically, and it's here to stay permanently, right? And that's a very, very good thing. But this staff and the efforts that they've put forward, we should all be grateful for them. We should all be grateful for the work that they do. I come from the view that people who go into government service, it's an honorable profession. I come from that 1960 John F. Kennedy viewpoint that people who go into government service, you go to help the people, you go to make less money than you would in the private sector quite often, right? But there's no better form of patriotism than to have a voice for the voiceless through government service. We also have to look at the other government entities that we're dealing with. We are the City of Tampa. We have about 400,000 residents here within city limits. There's Hillsborough County with about 1.5 million residents in the entire county, give or take some, right? We know the differences in recent policy that we've seen with affordable housing in Hillsborough County and Hillsborough County government. We know the state of Florida's record whenever it comes to affordable housing. The city of Tampa is taking a very aggressive, compassionate, forward-looking type of view on affordable housing. We, with all due respect to our brothers and sisters and other governments, we stand out from that, right? But we have to understand what our limits are as a city government whenever it comes to affordable housing. We should do everything that we can do with vigor, compassion, and resolve for affordable housing, but be honest with the people of our community on everything that we can do and that we can't do. Right? I think that's something that's very, very important. That includes also having an honest discussion on how to fund affordable housing. We've had various options put forward to us on how to fund affordable housing. We have to be very, very honest with that with the public. We also have to, and I'm going to read later during public comment, if I may, a statement from Karen Clay, but look at specific groups for whom, if we have a Category 3 hurricane in housing in Tampa and in Florida, they have a Category 10 hurricane in housing. I'm talking about groups who have been long marginalized. That includes, but is not limited to, people with disabilities, something that I often talk about and that a lot of council members, all council members here have a A+ voting record on, by the way, whenever it comes to those with disabilities. We also have to talk about how transportation, and as the presentation acknowledges, and the connectivity that has to affordable housing. We are near dead last in major metro areas throughout the United States in funding for mass transit. I am proud to be the chairman of HART, and I take that on to try to move forward discussions on BRT, discussions on buses, discussions on different ways that we can get folks around to work. Right? When people don't have accessible transportation options, that only contributes to a crisis in affordable housing. We need to do better. That means taking a look at, again, and we're obviously not going to talk about this today, but revenue sources for mass transit. In 2018, 2022, we saw referendums to try to put mass transit forward, right? For many legal reasons, that didn't come forward. We can't let go of that. We need to have a discussion in City Council and CRA. I'll be talking about in CRA next month on how the CRA can help potentially HART, right, in areas where we have a lot of need, et cetera, and really give that movement forward. We also have to talk about not just those who are struggling to make it, right, but those also pushed in the middle of the city of Tampa and Hillsborough County. I'm talking about our teachers, our nurses, our cops, our firefighters, our welders, our carpenters, et cetera. Tampa is being turned into Miami whenever it comes to the housing market. That means that those at the bottom don't have a prayer, right? And those in the middle have less of a prayer than they did before. It's up to us and the city government to make sure that those in the middle and those working so hard to get to the middle, right, have got a voice in there. And that's certainly something so important. I'll also talk very briefly about Resolution 568, which is, this goes to the heart of that issue. And I know that our Racial Reconciliation Committee will prospectively be talking about affordable housing. So a lot of other things to talk about, but due to the time limitation that I proudly proposed, I'll shut up. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, point of order. Are we doing opening statements? Now, this is not the goal discussion, right?
Yeah, this is item number 1.
Okay, this sounds like opening statements. So,
Councilmember Henderson.
Good morning, everyone. I don't really have a lot to say, so I will try to be brief. It's not necessarily goals, it's just an opening statement regarding the priorities of housing, particularly for District 5. Some of the things that I care about is, the least fortunate of us. You got to keep thinking about the renters. We must stabilize rent. I know a lot of people don't necessarily like hearing that, but that's just a fact. There are people who are being disenfranchised out of their communities, and they don't have a place to go. They can't continue to afford to stay in the city, and that's really important, our priority there. We should also be thinking about our veterans and our seniors, those who are disabled, when we come to the table to discuss housing. And one that's near and dear to me in particular is workforce housing, especially, for our educators. Teachers should not have to live in a 4 teachers should not have to live in a 4-bedroom apartment to afford to live in this city. And so, there's one aspect of that in terms of paying them, but housing should be attainable for someone who has a college education. And it's just not that's just not the case anymore. So workforce housing is really important. Housing for our homeless population, our veterans, our disabled, the person, honestly, who can buy a house. There are people who still are able to achieve that, even though it's tough. They may not be getting into the house that they want to get into initially. It may be a little bit smaller, but there are people who are still able to close on housing and reach that particular American dream. So we just got to think about those who are the least of us. Thank you.
Councilmember Clendenin.
Good morning. Yeah, one, I'll focus on the goals, so I think it's item number one of what I had jotted down, kind of our assignment. It asked us to present three. I've kind of got maybe one or two more than that. I believe that as we pursue housing, we need to prioritize rehabilitating substandard housing in the city. I think that is a key element to inhibit gentrification, that we go into neighborhoods and we help people remain in their homes, that, folks that need, if they're potentially having issues, roof issues, or any other issues that prevent them from staying in that house, it's much cheaper to rehabilitate something than to tear it down and build something new. And again, it holds off on gentrification, which enhances our neighborhoods and the cultural diversity. And one of the reasons why I wanted to live in the city to begin with and raise my family here was because of the diversity of the city of Tampa. I think we need to ensure that any project that we fund benefits current residents of the city of Tampa and not future residents. If we're going to spend taxpayer money, we need to make sure that those projects benefit the people that have invested and currently live here. And so I think that we have to be very cautious as we move forward of how we're spending these dollars and what it looks like and what that's going to mean for the city of Tampa. The market will, people want to move here and buy $3 million condos. We got plenty of those. But what are lacking is actually housing for the folks that are struggling to survive in the city of Tampa as we speak today. I'm really, and this is my heart goes out to making sure that we have temporary bridge housing. And I think some of the reports that we're going to hear today talks about that. I think as a society, we are responsible for providing some temporary bridge housing to folks that, to get them from where they are to where they need to be. And not necessarily, it's that hand up versus a hand out kind of mentality of ensuring that we have that type of housing available for the citizens of the city of Tampa. Everything we do, we need to prioritize senior citizens, families with children, and citizens with disabilities. They are the folks that we as a just society need to constantly be looking out for. And especially our senior citizens and folks with disability and kids. I mean, kids are kids, and we owe all of these folks, every one of these elements, every benefit of the doubt, every opportunity we can to ensure that they have opportunities, not just in housing, but in work and leading productive lives within the city boundaries. I want to ensure that if we're building affordable housing or promoting affordable housing, that housing is placed within transportation corridors. And I think what you're going to see today in this presentation, they discuss this equation of the cost of living in the city of Tampa. Transit and housing is intrinsically tied. That if we can reduce the cost of transit, folks can maybe afford a little bit more in housing. So what we need to do is ensure that as we're building housing or we're encouraging housing, that housing is built within transportation corridors so that hopefully somewhere down the line, people wake up in Hillsborough County and that we actually have a viable transit system. The other issue is, as we prioritize spending in the city of Tampa, we do have a sizable budget. We need to have an open and honest conversation of cash versus credit and what the real cost of providing stuff is with interest rates. Can we prioritize spending? If we decide that whatever issue is a priority for the city of Tampa, that pay as you go is absolutely the way to go as we can. And credit ends up costing sometimes up to double the cost of this stuff. So that if we can take money from somewhere else where we're maybe, other parts of the budget, if we prioritize that this is the way we should be spending it, we should be making sacrifices in other places and shifting the money to here. And that's pretty much sums up as far as the direction that I would like to see this conversation go. as far as priorities within this discussion. I know that the staff has spent a tremendous amount of time preparing this. I mean, when you see this document, it's only on, I don't know how many pages, it's six. So, but it's, I mean, I can't even imagine the amount of work hours that went into this. It is a lot of information. But again, I will take issue that, you know what, we're always pivoting. Just decisions that have previously been made, we need to tweak or change or pivot as new facts become available, or priorities become available, or new ideas get presented. So I don't think we should ever our feet should never be in cement. We should be able to move forward on different issues as better ideas come forward.
Thank you very much, sir. Councilmember Hurtak.
Thank you very much. And I actually disagree with that in terms of money. We've already established the $50 million, and if we turn on a dime, that's another year before they can get anything started. But, so today I wanted to thank staff for what they've done and the time they put into it. They've been working on this for months. It's an incredibly holistic plan, and I think that's my priority. My priority is the fact that you can't just focus on housing. You can't just focus on housing for one type of group. You have to focus, we are so below housing. They have a great comment, or they have a great statistics that we need over 26,000 units of affordable housing. But I've heard that we need double that in just housing, period. And what's happening is people who are moving here who can afford it are taking the apartments from people who can't. So we need everything. We need absolutely everything. We need to talk about transportation. We need to talk about making sure our citizens who struggle, who need the extra help, get it. All of that is very important. Will this plan change? Absolutely. But, and as a good example of that, Kayon Henderson will come up and talk later about how the RMAP program has already changed. The rental assistance program, we started it last year. They found better ways to do it. And so they'll be talking about that change. So change will come because, quite frankly, I believe death, taxes, and change, the only guarantees you can have in life. It's a solid plan to begin with, and I really want everyone to truly think solidly today about perfect being the enemy of good. So, I brought some receipts this morning. Miss Scharf.
We have an issue with you're going to show them on the overhead?
Yeah.
It keeps turning on and off. It says no signal, and I don't know. I think T&I is trying to fix it.
Seems like a loose cord.
Would you just like to read it from your documents?
No, because it's the visuals, or that's the whole point, is the visuals. Can someone go ask T&I if everything's set?
I think they're resetting because it's
Oh,
just
okay.
cut off.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, let's go to Carlson, and we'll come right back.
Yeah, he needs the same.
Oh, he does? Okay.
Yeah. And we have cars made of nothing but technology. It's amazing.
It's all good until it falls apart.
Yeah, you're right. It's all good until it falls apart. So hopefully we can get it all fixed up this morning.
All right, she's coming.
We can't because Mr. Carlson also needs.
Nothing can be certain except death and taxes. Is the
And
phrase.
change.
Broken overhead.
Yeah.
Broken overhead.
Technology in general.
Yeah, the fact that technology will always work until you need it.
And Ron Weaver will show up at every meeting.
Okay, well, I'll try to do what I can. And then hopefully we can get, well, never mind.
No, you have to turn it on.
It is promising.
You put this online.
There we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, TNI.
I couldn't get the whole thing on.
Those are the real heroes of today.
It's too big? Well, it should be 16 by 9. in this Okay, thing. okay.
All right, take it away.
Okay, so 3 of us were at the USA MUMA's State of the Region address. Council members Henderson and Clendenin were with me that day, and so some of this was pretty impressive. Next slide. Some of the key insights for housing and health affordability: Tampa Bay's Zillow Home Value Index shows consistent increases in home values, spiking significantly since 2020, which we've all felt. This upward trend has unfortunately adversely affected affordability, with Tampa Bay's ranking dropping from 2nd position to the 4th for homeownership affordability. Tampa Bay Zillow's Observed Rent Index exhibits a comparable upward trend as the Zillow Home Value Index, confirming the rising cost of renting. While Tampa Bay was placed 9th in 2015, the region dropped 6 positions to the 15th by the year 2023, highlighting the growing affordability gap between rent and income. Next. So, as we've seen at the top, affordability, housing and transportation expenditures as a percentage of income, 57% in Tampa Bay. The United States is only 56%, and the best, if you can zoom in a little bit on that, Ms. Scharf, is Minneapolis-St. Paul, which is 52, and they have done a phenomenal job on housing. So this is a crisis all across the country. Affordability, housing expenditure as a percentage of income, though, we've done 42%, which is in line with the United States. Minneapolis is at 39%, and they're the best. Next. This one, the median household net worth is $173,000. In Minneapolis-St. Paul, it's almost $250,000 because they have a lot of housing policies that we don't have. Looking down at the average household income, lowest quintile is $15,000. We have a lot of people who really need a lot of help. Okay, next. This came out in the Tampa Bay Business Journal yesterday. Tampa's avoiding a national search for a CEO for the airport because of housing prices. Next slide, next one. Tampa's home prices are so expensive that they could negatively affect an external search for the next CEO of Tampa International Airport, someone who makes over $500,000.
1 million.
I'm sorry, $1 million. So this couldn't be a worse time to go outside and bring somebody else to move here, they say. And my last but most important slide. This I did this morning from Zillow. This $175,000 is what someone who earns 80% AMI can afford. There are 82 houses in the city of Tampa that they can buy.
Thank you very much. Wow. Councilmember Carlson.
Hey, no.
Morning, everybody. My aide is out on a family emergency, so I'm going to run my own slides. The first thing is that, just to say, everybody, I can't turn around, but this city council has heavily supported housing for the 5 years that I've been on city council. 4 years ago, I made a motion which the CRA board, city council approved unanimously, which was to put 30% of the CRA money in affordable housing. I think it's one of the biggest investments anybody in the region has made in affordable housing. Unfortunately, because of a lot of internal issues, the city didn't spend it. But now we're at the point where we're ready to do it because we've got new staff, and I think we do have great staff. This year, that money alone is about $30 million, which is a huge amount of money. And so there are a lot of lower numbers that have been circulated, but just the CRA part of it is $30 million. I put these slides together early this morning, and so if there are any mistakes, it's because I was half awake. But I was trying to see if I could make a point here. The current situation in Tampa, and this is not a value judgment of the presentation, but the current situation in Tampa is that the city focuses on ribbon cuttings of shiny new buildings. And it's driven by what I call the edifice complex. If you think about, if somebody says Tampa's been really successful the last few years, what do they point to? Water Street. But that was a $100 million subsidy also. Think about the housing we could have built with $100 million. It's great. I'm glad that we have Water Street. It's fantastic. It's well run. The people are awesome. But this paradigm is measured by the number of shiny new buildings. It's a visual vision, and the perception of success in the media. And the way they go about it, the strategy is let's relax zoning to let anybody build whatever they want, wherever they want, and give developers subsidies. Here's what I would propose, if I can get the piece of paper. The goal should be higher quality of life for our residents. Our residents deserve it. They pay taxes. They work hard. They deserve a higher quality of life. And it's driven by the needs and interests of our residents. They're going to tell us this morning, they've been telling us that they have needs. We need to work on it. Measures by TampaScorecard.com. Councilmember Hurtak just showed the regional scorecard. Tampa Scorecard is developed by me and my aides with the same people that do the regional scorecard. The difference is that ours is just Tampa, not the region. So we break out the numbers, and anybody who wants to look at it can look at it. The point is that it needs to be data-driven to achieve maximum positive impact on the residents. And some examples of the Tampa Scorecard: median household income. And this is only through 2021. But what it shows is that Tampa hasn't done very well compared to our peers in the state. Our households aren't doing very well. And this is Tampa, not just the region. And you'll see that St. Petersburg does better than Tampa. Per capita, this income disparity between African Americans and Caucasians. Tampa, you want to be low on this list, and Tampa is the second worst in the state. It's absolutely horrible that we have these disparities. We need to change them. Housing is a part of the equation that we need to look at. But this is the kind of number that we can change if we have the right housing policy. Median household income disparity between male and female workers. Again, it shows that St. Pete does better than Tampa. Tampa is not trending well. We need to change these numbers. These are measures by the U.S. Census, by the way. Home ownership rate. You see that, again, Tampa is fourth in the state, and we're not trending in a direction where we're going to change home ownership rate. We know in America, home ownership and owning your own business are the two ways that you build intergenerational wealth. I looked at the 22 census this morning, and if I got any of the numbers wrong transposed, I apologize. But there are like just under 400,000 people in the city of Tampa. That translates to 157,000 households. The 2022 number was owner-occupied households, 50.5%. That's 79,000 households. So if we want to change the number of people who own their own homes, we don't have to change it much to have a big percentage change. The same thing if you take the 157 minus 79 and we're looking at rental units. We don't have to move very much to change the percentage, but we measure the outcome instead of the output. The median value of an owner-occupied home is $333,000. Percentage of African American home ownership percentage of African American is 21.8%. So that's 34,000. The percentage of African Americans who own homes is a lot less than the percentage of whites. It's only 39%. Here's the problem. However you calculate the overall problem is about $10 billion, and I can talk to you about how to calculate that. That little red line is the city's budget. So we don't have the money. The whole city budget is less than $2 billion. We don't have $10 billion. The solution now is let's react to what the developers want. One developer asked us for a $14 million subsidy. That was for 37 units at 80% AMI for 30 years. That's $375,000 per unit. The city's capacity we'll present today is $100 million. If we divided that out, we're only going to have an impact on 267 people.
Thank you very much, sir.
If we help 1,000 families buy a home, we can spend the same money and do the same thing.
Thank you very much, sir. All right. Mr. Drongo, do you want to? Mr. Drumgo, I'd like to, before you open it up to your presentation, being that this is item number 1 that we've talked about, I'd like to take some public comment. Is that all right?
Yes,
or would
sir.
you rather go into this discussion and then with the breaks in between so we can digest it more easily?
Councilman, or Chairman, for the record, Elise Stromgo, Deputy Administrator for Development and Economic Opportunity. It is at your pleasure as to how you want to manage that time, right? We would love to get into the presentation to allow for the Q&A to occur.
Okay.
That's how it is structured, but again, it's at the pleasure of council as to how they want to proceed.
I think procedures, because we have two items on the agenda, and I think procedurally, we probably should have public comment after one, because this, what he's gonna present is item number 2.
Okay.
And then, so we can go to, and then we can, I mean, if we have to repeat it and it's redundant, then it's redundant, but I think procedurally we should do.
Fair enough. If there's anybody here that wishes to speak on public comment regarding this housing workshop, please come up, state your name. We had some registered speakers. Robin Lockett is registered, but she's here, so we see you. We have 2 others. One is registered for item 1 and 2, and the other one's registered for item number 2, so we'll take them later. So whomever wishes to speak, please come up. You have 3 minutes. State your name.
Chairman, may I just ask a question?
Yes.
With these people who are speaking now, if they're talking generally, will they have another opportunity to speak after the
Yes.
second item?
Yes. Yeah, do you want to go ahead and read the rules?
Good morning, Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney. Members of the public are allowed a reasonable opportunity to address the items on the agenda before today's workshop. A 3-minute time limit applies to all speakers. Speakers and members of the public are reminded that they are to refrain from disruptive behavior, including making vulgar or threatening remarks, or making or causing disruptive noises or sounds, or displaying signs or graphics. Speakers are also reminded to please refrain from launching personal attacks against any city official, staff member, or members of the public. The chair will rule out of order any person who speaks without being recognized or attempts to address the council from outside the speaker area at the podium, and persons failing to comply with council's rules may also be ruled out of order and, at the discretion of the chair, may be removed from the chambers for the remainder of today's meeting. Also, finally, council should be reminded that you should refrain from engaging a speaker during public comment, and the public should be aware that council does not take questions or have a dialogue during public comment. This is your opportunity to express your position to City Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Please state your name. You have 3 minutes. Good morning.
Uhuru Mentiznot. Mentiznot means anything's possible, and Uhuru means freedom in Swahili. And we as African people should always be thinking about our freedom and our reparations. The attorney's comments before every city council meeting is childish and insulting. You know, there's certain things, I've got kids, young kids and adult kids, and there's certain things I don't even discuss with them anymore because I trust them. And if I don't trust you, then you're going to be in trouble if you do the wrong thing. That's a little parental advice. A little political advice is don't see a bunch of adults in a place and then give a childish statement week after week after week. It's childish and it's insulting. It is. Hate that I have to waste my time in that. Like I always say, if you're not talking about reparations, if you're black and you're not talking about reparations, you're not talking about nothing. Nothing at all. If you're talking about the Super Bowl and the this and the that and what Megan Thee Stallion did and what Little Kim did and what Jay-Z's doing, you're talking about nothing. We as African people have to talk about reparations. And it's good to see that we're at this point where we're talking about housing, which is part of our reparations. Good to see we got to that junction. But I want to say this, and not revealing my age, but since Poe, Martinez, Friedman, Greco, Aéreo, Buckhorn, and Castor, African people have had lots of promises around housing and nothing. I knew when we used to line up down here to put your name, see my parents down here signing up to get dollar homes. The city was giving away 1 or 2 homes, but they were taking away many homes under crack houses and other things that they were taking away from the African community. The fact of the matter is, if we're speaking about housing, We need Jane Castor here, right now. Right here, right now. We don't need her someplace else. We don't need her with a shovel, like throwing dirt in some multi-million-dollar project. We need her here, right now. Because from all what African people have seen, it's trickery. And we end up getting nothing out the deal. 0.75%, $15 million out of a $2 billion budget. The police department getting way more than that. The fire department's getting way more than that. And housing is the #1 issue. In any city, in any place, in any country.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right. Yes, sir. Good morning. Please state your name.
Hey, Tony. Listen. I want you to read it for me. I got my glasses. Let me tell them first. Oh, okay.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. My name is Pastor Frank Williams, located 1112 East Scott Street, which is the location of my church. You know, it's so sad we talk about affordable housing. What is affordable housing? If I get $1,200 a month just for Social Security, where I supposed to stand? I guess I have to pay renter $12,000 a month, and that's ridiculous. You know, we get up here and we talk, never get no answer. We don't get no answer from none of y'all. And y'all supposed to be representing the city of Tampa, but we never get no answer. Now, I know you're gonna ring that bell on me, but I want Trump to go ahead and read something to you. Just come out of the Florida Sentinel.
Article from the Florida Sentinel featured council members agree with Member Vieira about establishing a racial reconciliation committee. Tampa City Councilman Luis Vieira, District 7, spent several months speaking with community organizations and members of the community about his idea to propose to his fellow city council members the establishment of a racial reconciliation committee. Last Thursday, February 22nd, 2024, the council members agreed with Vieira's proposal and passed the proposal 7-0 to establish the committee, which is in the planning stages. Vieira and the council are looking to do this in collaborative effort with the Tampa Mayor Jane Castor. Hopefully, over the next 30 days, they will have discussed a proposal with Mayor Castor. I do believe this is something that, if done correctly, can yield good results for our city and a much-needed continued discussion on pivotal issues, Vieira stated. End of quote. Vieira believes that there should be specific issues addressed. He suggested the following 6: affordable and accessible housing, returning citizens, economic development, empowerment, and entrepreneurship, and this can include training, apprenticeships, small business growth, capital access, contracting, etc. The school to prison pipeline and our youth, and this can include youth employment and training, civic engagement and restoration of rights, historical, quote, truth-telling, end of quote, much like the Equal Justice Initiative project. This involves having a good discussion on our history and as it pertains to African Americans with public education on the same. When I asked about members of the committee, Vieira said there can be discussions on this. However, his idea is that each council member recommend one person. The mayor recommended a person, a couple of core organizations in the community recommended a person, and one person will serve as a facilitator. Vieira explained that the proposed committee is in the planning stages, and I look forward to his good discussions on these issues. End of quote.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir.
I had him to read that because I don't have my glasses.
Yes, sir.
And it looked like the words are all in Spanish to me. But
thank you very much. That concludes your time, sir.
my time all right?
Yes, sir.
I didn't say nothing yet. I had him to read that because I didn't have no glasses, man.
Thank you very much.
Give me a little time to say what I got to say. The reason I had him to read that for me, I don't have my glasses.
30 more seconds, sir.
I can understand what you're saying. If you got 3 minutes, give me 3 minutes. That's all I want. But you know, affordable houses, who deserves to live in affordable houses? It's not just black. It's white, Mexican, and all the rest of the poor people. I can't even afford to live in an affordable house. I just want to go told y'all what I get. $12 a month, $1,200 a month. And what is $1,200 a month in this society nowadays? You can't do nothing with $1,200 a month.
Thank you very much, sir.
But y'all need to give us some answers. We come up here week after week.
Thank you very
Y'all
much.
never give us no answer. So this guy here named Louis Farrell, you know what?
Thank you
Let's
very
have a
much, sir.
black
We have to
man
go to
up
the
there.
next speaker. Thank you,
Black
sir.
man know more about. My daddy the one that taught me black history, but y'all don't want to teach me black history, not white history.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
It's a shame the way y'all do us big time. Just mess over us all our lives.
Good morning, ma'am. Please state your
Good
name.
morning, City Council. I'm Chloe Coney, a woman that wear many hats. In the 1990s, I was the CEO of CDC of Tampa, and we built the first apartments in East Tampa, Osborne Landing, Osborne, and 34th Street. And we partnered with Bank of America, and we built 25 single-family homes there. And I'm happy to say now that my son Ernest has taken over and has built hundreds of single-family homes, as well as I want to thank you, City Council, CRA. Some of you been to the ribbon cutting that we built the homes with the East Tampa CRA. So again, I've been a strong component of affordable housing. But I'm standing here today to talk about this $12 billion. I appreciate all the statistics that your City Council provided to us today, because it's very important. But I'm a strong believer, and my son Ernest could not be here. He's in California attending a housing conference with Neighbor Works. And as he suggested to us, and we heard the statistics from City Councilman Carson that said the race between whites is around, I know I read what the state of Florida is around 70%, and then blacks is 40%. So we have a long ways to go, and as they said, that's the only way we're going to generate home ownership and financial generational wealth. I want to suggest, and Ernest has told me to tell you this, that we need to start diversifying our houses for density. Why aren't we building home ownership with duplexes, condos, townhouses? CDC now is building off of Diana Gardens for the Hillsborough County. They're going to build 24 townhouses for sale. So again, not only just building single family, let's start diversifying it. We need really all the housing, I want to say that, rental. But in our neighborhood in East Tampa, we'll get nothing but rentals now. In the past, we know that East Tampa was a strong home ownership of blacks, okay? So to alleviate all the gentrification, let's sell some houses to some blacks in East Tampa and Sulphur Springs. And I want to say thank you. And if you do some townhouses, I'm getting older now. I sell my house in the county and move to the city in one of them nice condos like you build in Channelside and Waterside and all of that, okay? So thank y'all so much. Let's put more money in there.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Next speaker. Good morning. Please state your name.
Good morning, Connie Burton. There's a saying that before you can trust, you got to verify. And there's been very little we as African Americans can verify to anything. Every program in my lifetime that has been for the benefit of our community has resulted in something that was not for the best usage to the African community. I think about when they built those homes over in Belmont Heights Estate, and we had to come to the council because they was infested with Chinese drywall. And for 10 years, those women had to endure that because we couldn't force the housing authority or others to come to the table to hold them accountable. In our communities, where our communities has been labeled as drug infested, blighted, full of poverty, now it's prime real estate for everybody except us. So the $12 million is a drop in the bucket. We have presented proposals after the proposals to the staff regarding how CRA money should be used to uplift our seniors in housing repairs. You know where it is? It's in file 55 because nothing is being done at a rate in which we could make it happen. We have available lots right now in our community that's developers don't want, But you know what? We can't get anything built on it because I'm of the opinion now, since they say trust and verify, that something sinister is happening. The pushing out of Black communities. As you wrote Resolution 568, it ain't going nowhere. You said it. You acknowledge harm and pain that have been done to African people. Now, I don't speak for other people, but you said in this resolution that as it related to Black people, that policies have been written to cause us pain. How will it be restored this morning? Yes, everybody needs housing, but how do the community that has built Tampa, have helped build this nation, don't benefit first? It's time for us to come in first base now. So we're saying that part of this proposal, we're hoping that the staff has verified, you can move forward in saying that East Tampa and every pocket that look like me, that has a high proportion of Black people that's living in poverty, that go to work every day, that we talk about housing that's going to benefit that community, that people, that group, so our children can see a future moving forward. And once we see that, then we'll have a seamless city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please say your name.
Good morning, all. My name is Malik Lukman Abdullah, and I think that some of these people that have spoke are excellent in what they see and understand. And I don't know where you guys get your information from or your forward progressive intention, but they haven't served the people that have been coming to you all for the years asking you to invest in the community. You, excuse me, sir, you want to say something to these people? Do you want to say something to them? You got my time.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for giving up your time. But I always got something to say and be longer than the time y'all have for this here. What I need to say to y'all, and I just want to go say to y'all, you give me $1,200 a month. Where can I stay with $1,200 a month? Y'all make no kind of provision for the minute day. I'm almost homeless. Well, I am homeless. My roof needs fixing. Y'all won't do nothing about it. Things need to be paid. I need food in my house. Y'all won't do nothing about it. So they sent me a letter the other day talking about I'm qualified to get $125 food stamp. What that's for breakfast? That's all it is amount to. Food and everything else is going up so high. The young man that's giving me this space, I want to thank you, sir, very much, because they don't want me to talk, because I speak the truth. Nobody want to hear the truth nowadays, but we got to speak the truth. I've been a preacher now for 50 years, and now they're trying to take my church. It's Paradise Missionary Baptist Church. Well, none of you all come down there and try to save the church for me, help me, and you know who they were going to give it to? They want to give it to the Spanish people, because I don't speak Spanish. And we're going to have a committee. If y'all don't want to do nothing for me, then I get the governor to come down here. Maybe he could do something for us. And all of my cesspool with y'all dug up out there in Belmont Heights and Jackson Heights, y'all need to fill them in. And let us be a school that will accept us, and be a church that people want to come to and everything. What we need right now, we need a vision and a blessing from the Almighty God, because y'all don't want to do a damn thing for us. God bless you.
Thank you very much. Please be quiet in the audience so everyone can speak. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name. Good morning.
Yes, my name is Shemaine Moss Torres. Good morning,
morning,
members of the city's council. I'm here to represent the CDC of Tampa. I know Ms. Chloe Coney spoke to you a little bit about what we do, and I'm representing my CEO, Ernest Coney. As you begin to sit and think about how you want to disperse and plan out this $12 million, we encourage you to consider home ownership or sale housing versus rental housing. what I want to provide to you is the rationale for that. And I want to thank Mr. Carlson for bringing up those statistics that spoke to how we fare across this state and across the Bay. The funny thing is, those statistics aren't new. We've known for a long time that we were in this situation. And there is a saying that states, if you keep doing the same old thing and expect different results, we call that insanity. We're going to ask that we support home ownership throughout the city for those individuals that we spoke about earlier, because we know that home ownership is the best way to generate wealth. The equity that one family could receive based off of those 1,000 that we spoke about before are the same families that will contribute to the businesses and such in whichever community, which would build up the city of Tampa as well, but it would also help those families send their children to school, take better schools and better jobs, so they're not in a situation where if they were in a subsidized rental space, that the rentals will continuously outpace their income, because there is no few opportunities, if you will, for them to increase their income and garner jobs that will help them support the amounts of those increases. The subsidizing of rental spaces only support the owners. That equity goes into the owners. It does not support those who are within those homes. So those owners are the ones that benefit, not the tenants, not those individuals and those numbers that were on that screen today. And lastly, I'll leave you with for sale options also accommodate density in the form of exactly what Ms. Coney spoke to us about today. The concept of being able to build those townhomes and condos versus units, but condos that have amenities that all of us would be able to deserve as citizens would be important. Think about that. Think about the fact that those same units, instead of renting, we'll be able to build our citizens. We'll be able to build the lives of our tenants and their future generations. Who would not want that? What city would not want to say that they have invested in those who needed us the most, for those who traditionally did not have voice to articulate what you already know? So if you want to make sure that this moves forward and makes a difference, don't do the same old thing. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Next speaker, please state your name. Good morning.
Good morning. Commissioner Kimberly Overman and the founder CEO of the Housing Leadership Council of Tampa Bay. I'm here this morning because I do appreciate the work that's been done by your staff to be able to bring the data and the stats that you need to make good policy decisions. And I appreciate that you want to set goals to be able to determine how the CRA money that you've already voted to allocate towards housing is a good priority to be done. As it is, our region has never really set a housing strategy on how to address sustainable economic growth for our communities and our families and our residents and our businesses. But you've got to bring everybody to the table. And if you're not bringing the folks that have owned homes in our communities and help them stay in their communities, they're going to get that phone call every day, text messages every day, emails every day, that card from an investor that is going to come and sit on their doorstep and wait for that family to lose their elder. Yes. The highest population of Black-owned home ownership in the city is in East Tampa. And the average age is about 55. So over the next 5 to 10 years, that entire community will gentrify, like we've seen and was reported in Sunday's paper about South St. Pete. If we don't have a strategy for making sure that home ownership is maintained by those that own homes and increase the level of home ownership opportunity by expanding your zoning, your code, and your planning to include multiple methods of housing, the duplexes. We have policies in place in areas, not everywhere, where you can't build an ADU. You can't build a triplex. You can't build a duplex without it being highly complicated to a point where a family can't build that for their family. That's not okay. It's cost prohibitive. And when the zoning prohibits that being happen, you as City Council have the ability to address that issue. So I implore you to really, in developing your goals, not to forget that the type of missing middle housing that we need, and I'm not talking about missing cost, I'm talking about missing type. of housing that's needed for our seniors. AARP recently had a contest behind builders to be able to show different models of housing that is very affordable, but will not be approved in the city of Tampa because of our zoning and our codes. That's not okay for the seniors that need to be able to live. Like this gentleman that has 1,200, may own his home, but can't figure out how to stay in it because he doesn't have the ability to actually cover his utilities, and he certainly can't maintain that property. And when he gets code violations against him and that takes his property, that's not okay.
Thank you very much.
So I want you to include that in your thought process and your policies when you do that, and I thank you for your time.
Much. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Good morning. Please state your name.
Good morning, Dr. Michelle Williams, also founder and CEO of the Stay Woke podcast program and radio. Today, we gather under the shadow of a crisis that not only tests our moral fabric, but challenges the very principles of justice and equality that define us. We stand before this esteemed diocese, not as petitioners of charity, but as advocates for justice, not as beggars on the street, but as bearers of truth, demanding an end to the housing crisis that disproportionately afflicts the Black community in our beloved city of Tampa. The housing crisis we speak of today is not merely a matter of economics. It is a reflection of a deeper injustice that has roots in a history of discrimination and exploitation. The soaring prices of homes, the gentrification of neighborhoods, and the widening chasm between the rich and the poor are but symptoms of a disease that has plagued our society for far too long. In 2020, this diocese, alongside its attorneys and advisors, acknowledged the scars left by slavery on the Black citizens of Tampa. This acknowledgement was a beacon of hope, a promise of redress and reconciliation. Yet 4 years have passed, and we find ourselves echoing the words of the prophets, justice delayed is justice denied. We are told to wait, but how long can we patiently be preached to the weary? To those who find no solace in promises unkept and acknowledgments unacted upon. Our call to action today is not born out of a desire of retribution, but from a deep-seated belief in fairness and the possibility of healing and unity. The lands upon which we stand, hollowed by the blood and sweat of those who came before us, are crying out for our justice. These sacred grounds, desecrated by indifferences and greed, are a testament to the struggles endured by our ancestors. It is upon us, the descendants, to honor their legacy by ensuring that justice is not just a concept enshrined in books, but a reality experienced by all. To the leaders of this diocese and to all those in position of power, we say, acknowledge this depth of this crisis. Compensate those who have been wronged. Let us work together to create a future where the color of one's skin does not determine their access to a home, the opportunity to dignity. Let us build a community where every man, woman, and child, regardless of their race or income, can say that we now have a place to call home.
Yes, ma'am. Next speaker, please state your name.
Hello, my name is Loretta Baker. I came here with solutions. I know you're talking about housing crisis, so my thing, instead of just, I want to have a solution. My solution is, I'm a real estate agent, I'm retired, and I came across this property, and I keep telling everybody on the council that I told them at Tiger Bay, it's a 32-unit condo that sits vacant. It's been vacant for years because the owner cannot sell it because you say, well, it's derelict. No, it's not. You know what it is? It's a building that sits there because it has to be owned by HOA and it doesn't have one, so you can only sell it as one unit. So you buy the one unit, that's 32 homes. Right now, as soon as you can get the HOA done and get it up and running, you can put 32 families. You don't have to rehab it. 32 families that can have ownership. It's at 2424 Tampa Bay Boulevard. It's right in that complex. It's building in. It sits vacant. I've said it a million times, and I'm saying, you say you have a problem, but I see solutions to the problem. And that building has 8 3-bedroom, 2-bath ones in there. It has 8 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, and 16 2-bathroom units in there. It's already ready to go. I'm gonna leave the paper up there so she can go ahead and get, because it's not my listing, and so it's not like I'm out here trying to sell real estate to you. It's just a solution to the problem. And then I know everybody's talking about Sulphur Springs and how they're trying to make that area better. As a real estate agent, I know that it's very hard for me to sell anybody anything in Sulphur Springs. Everybody knows why, and I can't steer you away from it, but there's a reason why. But right down there on Tower Park, it sits there, all this here pristine land that the city mows all the time and keeps it nice and beautiful, and all it has is this little tower that's supposed to be a water pump. Why don't we put some nice units there? Why, instead of on 22nd Street in Hillsborough, where it's already got income-based housing already there, why are we just keeping it over there? I mean, you're gonna mess, Hillsborough is already a mess, just a whole mess. But you already have the road structures over there, you already have the land already cleared, the city owns it. Why don't you put it there? I mean, I don't understand why can't it be right there, and you can build you can put houses there. You know what? You want to make it affordable housing? Put some affordable housing there where they can gain some equity. Because if you buy a house down in Sulphur Springs, the amount of equity you're going to gain down there, as opposed to any place else in Tampa, it's not even worth it as an investment for you. Because the only thing that's good for is for investors. It's not going to be a good investment for me to live there with my family, because it will never ever gain the value that it would anywhere else in Tampa. And also, they need to use code enforcement to try to recognize places that maybe you can contact those owners and find out what they need to get those homes up and going. If you're talking about, instead of them giving them up to an investor. And also, need to work with the city. You need to work with the county and get these taxes, because one of the reasons that people don't buy houses also is the taxes will kill you. If the interest don't kill you, the taxes will get you the other way. That's a whole cluster. Not my bad. It's a whole thing of why it doesn't work.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Next speaker, please state your name.
Hi, my name is Valerie Bullock. I'm a resident of Ponce de Leon in College Hill, and I want to talk about the housing crisis. I think the first thing we need to look at is the barriers. It's a lot of barriers when it comes to rent and when it comes to owning. If you go over there to the West River, the old Main Street projects, when you go in there, they have a 25-page application for you. You cannot take it out the door. They go back on your criminal history 20 years. And all the new projects are ran by property management company, which are Spanish, and the majority of the people that stay in them are Spanish. It was a lot of black people that moved out of those places, and they wasn't given the chance to move back in it. And for me, the hardest thing that I see, when someone is building in our neighborhood, they're not building for us. The new apartment complexes that go up, people who stay in that neighborhood that look like me and got hair like me, their chances of moving in them is very small. And another thing, when it comes to Tampa Housing Authority, the mayor picked the people who work there, and they have a whole lifetime. You cannot get rid of them. We need caps on them the same way city council, you got X amount of years, these terms. That's the same thing we need for Tampa Housing Authority. It's too many people in the bed together that's making the decisions in the city of Tampa. We need separate entities, and we need to have accountability. It's just like the money from the city, we're gonna give it to the same old nonprofit, the same old organization. Nothing changed in my neighborhood. Nothing have changed. Miss Johnny Mae is 90 years old. She need cabinets in her house. Miss Louise is 84 years old. I bought her the bathtub, the wall, and the toilet so that she can fix her bathroom up. She needs some more help. What does East Tampa CRA say? If we give you the help, we're going to put a 30-year lien on your house. So now I had a mortgage on my house. My daughter have a mortgage, and my granddaughter have a mortgage. But when someone is buying a house, we'll give them $45,000 or $50,000 down payment system, and if they stay there 7 years, it's forgiven. Well, Miss Johnny may have been in her house 67 years. So if you fix it, I'm pretty sure she'll go ahead and stay there. When something is going on in East Tampa CRA, I walk all up and down my neighborhood, knocking on doors, stopping people on the streets. They got tree trimming funds. Do you want your trees trimmed? Here's the application. They got this for the roof. It's been in the paper. They're going to give you $50,000 per homeowner to fix your house up to par.
Thank you very much.
The money never came.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Next speaker. Please state your name.
Good morning. Sean Wilson again from Blue Sky Communities. I do want to echo a lot of the sentiments that I've heard here today. I think that the city should have a very robust home ownership program. That's not the work that we do at Blue Sky, but I do think that the city should have a very robust program. You got a lot of single-family neighborhoods that they're never going to get developed into anything very dense, and they should stay single-family, and you should promote that. You should also have a very robust owner-occupied rehab program, which might address some of the other concerns that were raised by the people here today. I would point out I'm also a City of Tampa homeowner, and I live in a neighborhood with quite a mixed income group and a lot of homeless people. So I mean, I feel like I'm definitely living a similar experience that any other City of Tampa homeowner lives. But whatever you do, you're going to have a balanced program because there's a system for affordable housing development. That doesn't mean that you can't innovate and evolve, but you're not going to do anything very revolutionary because everything you do is going to require a lot of leveraging. What is that? That's a lot of state money, and that's a lot of federal money, and that's a lot of private money from the banks. So if you want to do owner-occupied, fine. Make sure that the banks are right there with you. And I know that staff has a lot of great relationships with the banks because they've got to put a mortgage on these properties. Likewise, on the rental development, and that's what Blue Sky does. Every dollar that you invest in a Blue Sky development, depending on the exact financial structure, we're able to leverage those dollars between 7 to 1 and about 40 to 1, believe it or not, in some of our developments. So Blue Sky is here to be a part of the solution, and I'm a member of AHAC, and I do also want to compliment staff. I think they do a great job with the resources that they have. I certainly think that you should put more resources into affordable housing in all of the various programs, and you should. Specifically with regard to spurring rental development, you should do RFPs every year that are specifically geared towards the 4% tax credit program. That will ensure that the developers that build these communities know that there's going to be some city funding out there if we pursue a deal and put it all together. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of energy to do that, and to know that there's an RFP coming up in 25 or 26, that gives us a lot of confidence to really go after those sites that are hard to get, as you also heard described. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, sir. Next speaker, good morning. Please state your name.
Good morning. My name is Thomas Spalding. I've been here for 5 years. I'm happy to call Tampa my home. My wife is a pastor. I'm an educator. I'm a retired farmer. We've lived in Sulphur Springs and in Seminole Heights. We've been renting for 5 years. We have not bought a home, in part because of the challenge that is before all of us as a community. In previous life, I've been a volunteer with the Chicago Coalition for the Homeless. I was one of the founding board members of what's called Growing Home, which is an effort to help folks transition back into living spaces and jobs in Chicago. I'm president of a land trust currently that's in Illinois. This is where we used to live for 30 years. So I'm here, I'm observing what's happening around Tampa. I'm a volunteer with Florida Rising through my church. And I'm hearing stories, I'm seeing what's happening in my neighborhood, and there's a couple things. I want to commend the council for having this before you, for bringing staff to bring their expertise and the community into this question. I want to encourage you. I want to keep encouraging you to go deeper and commit to all the things that have been committed to over the last 5 years and to implement. I want to ask a couple of things, though, that you bring and elevate. I think underneath the affordability crisis is the question, Why are people poor? I just looked at a list, state by state, including Florida. We are the highest in the country of poor and low wealth people. 45% of our population is poor and low wealth. That's below the poverty line or below living wage. That's astounding. Now, as you've heard, I think embodied in what I've seen ahead of me
No,
testifying
please,
here today.
we need the microphone.
Okay, ahead of me today, I think was embodied the fact that 60% of that 60% of the black population is poor and low wealth, 30% of the white population, 60% of the Latino population, and so this breaks down racially. And we have to ask the question, why are we poor? How did we get here? Why are we racially segregated in income and in residences? That's underneath all of this structural arrangement. And that's 400 years of public policy that was race-based that led to this. That not only harmed people of color, but I would argue harmed white people as well. The poor working families you've all mentioned, the working families, the people in healthcare that are working in the police, the fire department, educators, pastors, we're not going to be able to live here. And I'm white. But that's part of the same arrangement. I think we need to get under that, but we can't solve this problem if it's not race-based solutions. We have to center those who've been harmed by 400 years of race-based policies, or we will make the same mistake over again in the name of doing something good. We will recreate the same thing. I was born before the Civil Rights Act. We were hopeful as families in 1964, but you know what? Those racial disparities are the same today that they were in 1964.
Thank you very much.
If we're race blind, we will make the same mistake, and my kids 60 years from now will have the same problem that we all have today.
Thank you
so
very
let's
much,
solve
sir.
it together.
Yes,
But
sir.
let's use a racial lens as we do the work.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, yes, ma'am. Good morning, please state your name.
Alice Moore, I'm with Florida Rising, and I am this year 79-year-old resident, born and raised right here. My first thing I'd like to say is I started out with something else in reference to rent. We're the only people that did not ask to come here. We were forced to come, and since that time, we have been mistreated. When we start things, it has been taken down. We've started our own community, it's been taken down. Here, everybody wants to say they help us. Right downtown, where blacks own their own business, they lived, there is no place. My father taught at Don Thompson, which was on Morgan Street. You wouldn't even know that exists. I couldn't even take my grandchildren, and they would even actually realize, they couldn't even picture a parking lot, a Tampa transit place. And I don't know, you're not helping, you're making it complicated for people to get the housing that they're talking about. West Tampa, I go through West Tampa, I was raised in West Tampa. After Don Thompson was closed to build Blake. Again, I go through West Tampa, everything has changed. I come downtown and look at all the things and I'm in tears. There's only 5 black churches that's downtown and you wouldn't know it because you don't go through on Sundays. You don't know any of the buildings there, and you say you're working for blacks, but you're washing us out. You're trying, like one lady said, we're like weeds and we're gonna come up anyway. But you're still cutting our chances to do. I'm doing a research on black women in the 1800s and reading their backgrounds. It's the same thing we're going through. Nothing has changed, and that's really, really sad. So I think you should be realistic about what we're doing and really help us. You're talking about redoing the housing. In the housing, there's a person who's had she gets $1,500 a month. She winds up, she needs her house redone. They have put her through so much to get, and she still hasn't gotten, it's been like 2 years. And every time she goes to talk or interview or try to get started, nothing has happened. The roof is falling in. Evo City, you were going to build up. You haven't done it. You're leaving people out. 7th Avenue is being built up. And what's that, 8th Avenue? But here's someone who's owned their house over 20 years. It shouldn't be complicated for people to get in and to get out. They don't want to get out. And like they said, they want their houses. And you said you're helping us, but you're tearing our down and our history. You're taking down. Like I said, I was in tears just coming downtown again. Nobody knows about those 5 black men, that they were people who worked. Central Avenue was very independent. Yes. West Tampa was very independent, up and down North Boulevard. Nobody really knows that because everything has been taken. So I think you say you're gonna help us, you say the black community, but you're not doing it.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, yes, ma'am, please say your name. Good morning. Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, please say your
Good
name.
morning. My name is Sally C. Lee with the Volunteer Missionary Society Penny Fund. And I'm sorry I missed the racial reconciliation. I have just a few things to say today. We should prioritize the new stabilization rules and prioritize low-income citizen. It's stabilized and affordable at $125 a month, $300 a month, $500 a month, and that is for stabilization and home ownership, rent to own. And we should always look after our seniors who don't get much money. They should count. And we should all come together on this rent stabilization and housing stabilization. We really need that in Tampa, Florida. And if they lose their abilities and benefits, we should be able to pick them up and they do not have to become homeless. And I am for all of that, and I thank God that we should learn to do that and redevelop the home stabilization, especially for seniors and low-income people. Thank you very much, Sally Lee.
Yes, ma'am, thank you very much. Yes, sir, good morning. Please state your name.
Good morning, City Council. My name is Ivan Rivera. I want to thank you guys for hearing this topic. There's a couple points I want to touch on. First, I imagine city staff is going to be doing a presentation on their comprehensive plan. First and foremost, obviously ADUs is something that I think needs to happen in the city of Tampa. We need to increase housing because that's where the crisis starts, is inventory. Really quick, it's important for me to state that I am in real estate. I'm a realtor, so I see this dynamic happen between a free open market and then considering the community. Housing affordability has doubled in the past 4 years. Housing prices have doubled. And it's something that has been unprecedented. And when it comes to affordable housing, I think all aspects need to be considered, from development grants to rental assistance to incentives for homeowners to build ADUs. But with the ADUs, I think we got to consider, is there going to be some type of deed restriction in regards to the capping the rates that those ADUs can be rented at? So things like that need to be considered. Really, the big point that I also want to point out is that at this meeting, what you're not seeing is homeowners and stakeholders here. There is some, but a lot of the people here are people that are impacted by the affordability prices in Tampa. And it's not fair that a big portion of the community isn't going to come out and advocate for affordable housing. And that's what we need. We need everybody to consider that this is something that's needed. Affordable housing doesn't need to look like the way Tampa apartments looked or Robles Park. It can look different moving forward, but it's up to us how we shape that out. The truth is that what you're hearing about marginalized communities is true. This is American history, and it's how we move forward now as Americans and make it easier to live here in the United States. Really, it's pricing affordability is rough with the rising interest rates. We have an insurance crisis happening in the state of Florida. It's really hard to get into homeownership, and I can tell you that as a real estate agent right now. So thank you, and that's my time, and I look forward to the presentation by city staff.
Yes, sir, thank you very much. Good morning, sir. Please state your name. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Nathan Hagan. I just want to confirm I'm not choosing between public comment now and
You
the other
can
ones.
speak again after, with the presentation, I'll have questions and answer area when people can talk again.
Thank you. Today is focused on people making less than or 50% AMI. That's the average median income. This is the lens that we need to look at this through. The fiscal solutions must be targeted at these folks, but as you'll hear, our budget can only go so far. What we've accomplished so far is to raise $50 or $100 million towards a $5 billion problem. That is 2% of the need. 2%. The shortage is tens of thousands of units. Today we'll talk about the critical task of putting the money to good use, and we need to continue increasing our housing spending allocations. We need to understand the critical nature of that work, but we must also look further to the other 98%. It will not get us out of what is becoming a permanent housing crisis. As Councilman Carlson put it, we will never find $5 billion in taxpayer money to subsidize our way out of this. So where do we find it? There is a simple idea that I have been advocating for, which I must continue to try to educate everyone on. How can I zoom in?
There's a wheel at the top.
This is fine. This is fine. I'm happy with this.
That's good.
Developers have this entitlement where the building is, right? City Council owns this area above that. City Council is sitting on billions of dollars of entitlements that they are withholding from developers that they can sell in exchange for affordable housing money. Billions of dollars of assets. This City Council needs to get excited about the opportunity of using bonus density to raise money for affordable housing. That is the only way we start talking about billions, because we will not be doing that with our regular allocations every year in the budget. Billions of dollars. I'll skip some other stuff. Density is not only cost effective, but it's revenue generating. We'll talk about how we can use our fiscal resources effectively, and multifamily housing is by far the best opportunity to do that. Preserving affordable housing, existing affordable housing when it's single family is an important use of resources as well, keeping people in their homes. But other than that, we need to be investing in multifamily housing. But we need to think about this as revenue generating. Density is not only cost effective, it is revenue generating. And then, sometimes we get fixated on increasing homeownership. We have tens of thousands of units behind. There is a shortage. It's not just about whether we make Tampa a majority renter or majority homeowner community. We need to be talking about creating homes for people that are affordable. I don't care at all whether they're rental or ownership. I personally would love to never own a home and have stable rent my entire life in the city of Tampa. We need units that are affordable and stable for people. I don't care if they're home ownership or not. That's my public comment for this part. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Good morning, sir. Please state your name. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Ron Weaver, 4403 West Azeel. I'm here as a private citizen. I've retired from the practice of law. So I'm not here on a particular deal. I'm here on a particular will. The political will to do this, not by reform, which is the enemy of revolution, as good as the enemy of great. But the time has come with Hillsborough County's declaration of racism as a public health threat to all of Hillsborough County, including every inch of the city of Tampa. It is time for a revolution instead of a reform for the 98% that Nathan, my brilliant young friend, has mentioned. He mentioned a brilliant idea. It's time for 100 brilliant ideas like Nathan's. It's time to authorize those ideas. It's time to give $5,000 grants to those who will bring those kind of ideas and not seek 12 million, but at least 24 million if we're going to treat this not as mere reform, but as the necessary revolution, and that we not have a permanent housing crisis in the city of Tampa. The city of Tampa is bigger than that, and it is better than that, and that we help the hurt most first is spoken elegantly by Michelle
Sir,
and half a dozen others.
Sir, please.
It is legal, yes, it is legal. I was commending her, forgive me, Mr. Chairman. I'm commending all of those who speak for a disproportionate benefit to those who have been disproportionately hurt. And it is legal, even under the most recent Students for Admission case by the U.S. Supreme Court, which left open the possibility of showing that prior impediments to housing, for example, means that you can indeed favor those who have been disproportionately hurt the most. It is a way of dealing with racial reconciliation, not with words, but with the necessity of dealing today, not with a particular deal, but with a particular will. And the political will must be a revolution in housing if we're going to deal with those 98% of those folks who are waiting for the city of Tampa to be a beacon of ingenuity, creativity, and not doing things the same old way, but dealing with the new needs in the way that addresses the fact that this community is bigger than this. This community is better than this. This community has more people whose ability to come up with these kind of creative ideas is international legend. We were noted as the second most creative place in the world by Forbes magazine, the second most creative place in the world with respect to the ideas and the new things that are happening in Tampa. Tampa is better than this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, good morning. Yes, ma'am. Please say
Hi,
your name.
Hamira Afzal. I'm just going to say a few things. A big part of the problem is that we view housing in the United States as a commodity, as something for money to be made off of. We need to view housing as a public good. Housing is a human right. Everyone deserves a safe place to live that they can afford without taking money away from other basic needs. So what I will say to you is stop protecting the status quo. Most of the opposition to things like increased density, to things that creative new things that will actually have an impact, a lot of the opposition comes from people who already have theirs. And they don't care how their preferences affect other people and in fact keep other people from enjoying the same rights, such as a safe, affordable place to live. Stop treating these rules and practices like they've been handed down from God. They haven't. They can be changed. They were created by years of bad policy, a lot of which was explicitly racist and classist. Stop. You have the power to make changes, not more of the same, to make real changes that will actually have an impact. Many of the people in this room have been struggling with an affordable housing crisis for decades. It's not new. It's been around for a very long time. So please, please, listen to the people, have the political will to do what's right.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. I see no one up to speak. All right, go ahead.
Good
Please
morning,
say your name.
Stephanie
Good morning.
Pointer. Nobody's happy here today. Nobody. And when we leave here at the end of the day, nobody is going to be having a party that they won, because there is no winning answer. This is not a Boy Scout spaghetti dinner where everybody's going to get the same thing and it's going to make everybody happy. This is not a communist country, and nor will it ever be. But what we have to remember is we have to diversify. We've got to have a buffet. And I think after reading the PowerPoints for today, that staff has brought us a buffet. And you guys are going to have to pick and choose. And everybody's going to have a different idea of what a great plate looks like, just like at Thanksgiving. And we're going to have to figure out how to do that without being disrespectful, rude, hateful, mean, and moving forward. And I hadn't heard anybody here talk about the vacancy rates that we have in this city. I haven't heard anybody here talk about the short-term rentals that we have that are taking up our long-term housing. I haven't had anybody here talking about the signs out in front of the apartment complex across the street from me that says 6 weeks free rent. What does that tell you? That tells you that they have vacant units. So we've got to look at all the possibilities and figure out how we can make everybody get a plate that gets them what they want and what they need. Because we're not all going to get what we want, but we might if we look at the whole big picture. And I think that that's why we have a 60-page PowerPoint today, because there's lots of different things to offer. And not everybody's going to be happy. When I show houses, I show 5-bedroom houses and I show 1-bedroom houses, because not everybody wants the same thing. I've placed 6 single ladies in 4-bedroom houses in the last couple months, which I think is odd, but that's what they want. That's what they can afford. And then I have other folks who I've got more people in a property than really should probably be there. But that we have to take into consideration everyone, not just one particular group. And that's where we're going to be most productive. So thinking about all of the options that are being brought to you today and how we can pick and choose, the best ways to help all of our citizens, not just one particular group. It can't be just homeowners. It cannot be just tenants. It cannot be just people who are gonna buy houses.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Yes, sir. Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Barbara Van Arsdale. I've been at this almost 3 years in Tampa. April 1st is my 3-year anniversary. I'm living in a horrible place. It has no disability access. It's under 300 square feet. When I moved in, it was the only place I could find coming up from Broward County, and it didn't matter how much money I had in the bank. My Social Security income was limited, and it wasn't 3 times what the landlords wanted. I was stood up at every appointment I made, and I drove up from Fort Lauderdale by myself after a stroke, only to get here and be stood up by realtors. It was horrifying. I spent almost a year trying to find a place. I finally got one here. I found out I'm outside of the city of Tampa limits, by the way, by 2 blocks. That sucks because I didn't know that. My address says Tampa. My rent is 70% of my Social Security check. I have lived on a farm. I watched my mom and dad build their home in Kenosha from the ground up. They worked in factories and moved to the farm and spent 4 years building the homestead so they could move into the country and be out where they belonged, where they wanted to be. That worked out great, so they got sick, and then they couldn't get to hospitals, and they didn't have medical services. My mom and dad grew up poor on farms with single parents. It was a struggle watching them, but they taught me from a small age, you do for yourself, you be independent, you treat everybody with respect, and you believe in God. Now, on that note, it's hard when at age 11 you realize your parents are going to sell their home because your sister just turned dating age and they don't want her out in a car. So you're relocated to a country area, and the whole town is telling you you can't sell your home to a mixed couple. Again, this was against the law back in the 60s, but my mom and dad were bullied by the neighbors, and they said, you can't dare do that to our subdivision, you'll ruin it. My dad and mom stood up for what was right. My mom was a union rep, my dad was a union rep, they fought hard. We moved to this small town outside of it. And I went to a 1-room schoolhouse in 6th grade after being in a religious parochial environment in a city, but not living in a city. Again, my mom and dad kept me really under wraps for a good reason. So when I got out at 18, the first thing I did was I drove to the city, which was Oshkosh. I got a job. There were no jobs there. They all sucked. I moved to Milwaukee. I learned how to buy my own homes. I bought my own home. I rented another home. I had my own car. And I had everything I wanted. And I was successful because I worked really hard and enjoyed what I did. And I always helped other people along the way. But I had nowhere to go with it. I lost everything because I relocated again and ended up in a place like California where you couldn't afford property for the income I would be maintaining myself on. So that's my story. I'm in Tampa. My lease is expiring April 1st. I have nowhere to go. It's dangerous where I'm at, and I need help.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
I will volunteer to help Tampa Housing if they need it, because they certainly do, from what I hear from the residents there already, to maintain their buildings.
Thank you very much. Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you for listening.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Please state your name.
I'm King Messiah Lightburn. I'm here today because I'm frustrated. I'm angry. I sat there and I hear a lot of our elders speak about the same issues that they had when they were children. I was raised by my grandmother in Silver Springs. You know, I'm pissed off y'all had this resolution 568 for 4 years, ain't did nothing about it. First thing they do when they ask you, when you go to court, can you read and write the English language? As I read this, and I listen to all of these comments and the lack of action, the only conclusion I can come up with, y'all just don't care about black people. You don't. You know, because y'all talk about all of these billions and millions of dollars that you got in your budget. You talk about your budget you want to increase, you feel me? And meanwhile, all of these complexities that were systematic, you don't even want to show, we can't even get a dime. We still got to come up here and beg for the same issues my grandma was begging for when she was a child. Affordable housing. recognition. We tired of these words, man. We are tired of, okay, you acknowledge it. You acknowledge the discrimination. You acknowledge all of this, man. But where's the action? Where's the resources? Only God help us that can come up here and have the knowledge enough to address you. But the average working man don't know to come down here. He too busy working 2-3 jobs just to afford affordable housing. Y'all would know I can't afford to be down here, but it's necessary. Because every generation come and every generation go. But it looks like we still have the same issues. We might as well be back in shackles and chains. Working feel like slavery. And what we working for? Just to pay our rent? You don't got nothing to make us homeowners. And like the lady said, we the only group of people that didn't ask to come here. We the only people that had our culture taken from us legislatively. So where is the legislation that's falling up behind this resolution 568 where you acknowledged it? What y'all did in the past. That's right. We didn't ask to come here to be in drug-infested neighborhoods, to be in families that's torn apart, can't even teach us our history, our culture, our heritage, our testimonies, teach us about our God. And you got a nerdy one to sit up here and start this off by praying and pledging allegiance to a flag that don't care about us. Hey, y'all put on notice. You put on notice because the judgment is on you because the Most High God is watching. So I'm going to end this off by saying all praise, all glory, and all honor to the Most High by saying hallelujah.
Thank you very much, sir.
I noticed something.
Next speaker.
No,
sir.
That spoke about how it need help. This lady talked about it need help.
Next speaker.
And they directly gave her information where she can get help. So we see you're not changing things.
Please state your name, sir.
Andy Joe Scaglione. In respect to the hardworking staff and talented staff, what I'd like to do is reserve my comments for after they make a presentation. I think that's only fair to them. So
Okay.
Anyway, I just want to put that on.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak before we go to the presentation? All right, if Mr. Drumgo, you would like to start the presentation? Yes. Councilman Vieira.
If I may, I was given a one-page statement by Karen Clay for public comment. May I read?
Go ahead, sir.
I really appreciate that, Council. This is from Karen Clay, who many of us know, just very briefly. Being part of the community and living as independently as possible are among the most important values and goals shared by people with disabilities. And by the way, put on the timer. It won't go over 3, if you don't mind. Their families and advocates. A home of one's own, either rented or owned, is the cornerstone of independence for those with disabilities. Across the state of Florida and our county, persons with disabilities face a severe housing crisis. For people with disabilities and their aging caregivers, there are far too many barriers to housing. Without affordable, accessible housing, many are at risk of institutionalization or homelessness. Many people with disabilities are experiencing an affordability crisis. 4.8 million non-institutionalized people with disabilities who rely on SSI have incomes averaging only about $9,100 a year, low enough to be priced out of every rental housing market in the nation, and Hillsborough County is one of the most expensive. An accessible home offers specific features or technologies, such as lowered kitchen counters and sinks, etc. For people who use mobility devices, finding housing with even basic accessibility features can be daunting, if not impossible. The Disability Caucus of Hillsborough County in Florida are strongly in support of the $12 million needed to secure affordable and accessible housing, affording our disabled community, as well as seniors, the ability to age in place in affordable and accessible housing is not only the right thing to do, but it's the most cost-effective thing to do. Respectfully submitted, Karen Clay. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. And we have one person registered for public comment before we go to Mr. Drumgo. Carol Ann Bennett, if you're online, please state your name. You have 3 minutes. If Carol Ann Bennett is on. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. Please state your name.
Hi, my name is Carol Ann Bennett. There was a woman who spoke earlier. Unfortunately, I didn't catch her name. She was wearing a black and white paisley dress with a red ribbon. I hope everybody goes back and rewatches what she had to say. I thought her comments were excellent. I also, Chairman Maniscalco, you mentioned the problem of corporate ownership. And although that's not part of this presentation, it needs to be thought about and it needs to be discussed. It's a nationwide problem. There's articles all over the internet about it. The national news, Lester Holt, they do stories on it. According to the MetLife Investment Management Study, the companies such as Wall Street-backed hedge funds, corporate landlords, and cash-rich investors could own close to 40% of all U.S. houses by 2030. And if you look at the history of these, because they buy so much, they end up with so much, they corner the market and they can raise the rents. They historically jack up the rents and they don't maintain the homes. This takes inventory out of the market for home ownership. And I want to remind everybody that everyone I know who's ever, when they retired, they didn't retire until their mortgage was paid off because they can't afford it. Your rent is never paid off. That's why you see some elderly people working until they drop. Home ownership provides financial security and predictability. It provides generational wealth. I think that the rehab program to keep people in their homes, to rehab their homes so that their children and grandchildren can inherit them, are extremely important rather than having a shark come in and pay just what the land is worth and then build a gentrified 4,000 square foot home. The people who get the money for just the land, that's not us. I also would like to talk about the fact that in this report, I don't see, it mainly addresses everything of 120% AMI and less. It doesn't talk about above that, and it doesn't tell us what's in the pipeline. And so I think we need to know what we have coming in order to evaluate our problem. I also noticed that it lumps 120% AMI, it lumps it all together. It never separates it out. And when I did that, looking at the report, not the PowerPoint, I found that the people who made 60% of AMI or less, there's not enough housing. But at 61%, anything between 60% and 120%, there's twice as many units as there are households. So
Thank you
this
very
needs to
much,
be
ma'am.
looked at.
Yes, ma'am. All right, that concludes our public comment at this time. Mr. Drumgo, go ahead, sir. The PowerPoint is up on our screen, and they'll bring it up on the main screen. Go ahead, sir. And please state your name.
Thank you. Thank you. For the record, Elise Drumgo, Deputy Administrator for Development and Economic Opportunity. I just want to start out by saying that, we hear the people, and we've heard you as a council. I think that the comments that you all made during the initial 30-minute session regarding the priorities, those are all embedded in our presentation, and you will find that as we go through the presentation. So I'm confident there's really no need to modify the approach on this. The goals that you stated, that you laid out relative to accountability on spending, temporary housing, housing for protected populations and those with disabilities, all a part of this presentation. The desire to reduce the housing and transportation costs across the city. Those are things that we've heard you all say over and over again at council meetings. We've heard the people come in and talk about that. Additionally, looking at those means of preventing gentrification in our communities, that's embedded in the presentation as well. We also have a stated goal as a part of the presentation to close the homeownership gap between our minority populations and our non-minority populations. It's a stated goal. We understand what we're up against. So with that, I'm going to jump in and I'll start the presentation here. And forgive me because we do have a lot to get through. As I mentioned before, our goal is to have the presentation for each section, and then we'll open it up for, obviously it'll be open for discussion amongst the council, and the chairman, you feel free to take comment as you see fit. But the city of Tampa has been on a growth trajectory over the last 2 decades, and our city has gained more than 90,000 residents since 2010. Our population has grown nearly 15%. okay? And before 2020, we all know the background, we know the history, that the city really only committed $2 million annually of its general fund dollars towards affordable housing. So the mayor came in and she set an ambitious goal of 10,000 units, creation and preservation for affordable housing. Now, I know there have been some reservations about the initial goal of 10,000 units, but the reality is that through the housing needs assessment, we discovered that 10,000 units is only 40% of the true gap, okay? We need more than 25,000 units at or below 50% area median income. It's been said that the subsidy to close that gap, more than $5 billion. That is true. But since that goal was set, the city, we were tasked, the staff worked very hard to address the immediate challenges that were presented through the COVID-19 pandemic. And the bulk of the resources went towards addressing housing instability, evictions, and homelessness to keep people sheltered during the pandemic. But this fiscal year, the city and this council, you made a significant change. You increased the local contribution towards housing tenfold. And we understand that without a doubt, that's going to go a long way to help fill the gap that is being left by diminishing federal funding, because those numbers are going down for us. But we're very thankful that the council approved the budget increases that we have for housing, and you've continued to double down on that as a CRA by continuing to set aside dollars. So collectively, our team has put together this coordinated strategy on how to expend those dollars. We are aware that the gap is very large, okay? So during the rest of the workshop, we're gonna walk you through the, our plan here on the coordinated strategy to expend these dollars. You'll also hear about land use strategies and programmatic changes, some of which you've heard from some of the folks here in the audience that needed to be tweaked, some of which we understood we needed to sit down and take a better look at how we serve our community, okay? And we anticipate that this is going to put us on a path towards meeting the housing needs. And of course, this council will be able to decide long-term how you want to continue to get into that gap, particularly when it comes to financial contributions. So as it relates to the agenda, our planning director, Stephen Benson, will provide you with context and background with some key data points from our housing needs assessment. Our housing and community development director, Kayon Henderson, will provide an FY23 recap. She'll touch on what that impact looked like. We'll then get into the coordinated response for fiscal year 24 and beyond, and you'll hear from both directors again on that. Deputy Administrator Feely will provide background on two key projects that she's leading that will impact policy and progress tracking so that we know what's in the pipeline, as some of the folks have said. Director Henderson will then also give you a financial primer that lays out how subsidizing multifamily works, how subsidizing single-family homeownership works as well. We'll close with some expectations that you all can have from us, and just to let you know what some of the things are that are forthcoming in the next months. And again, between each of those sections, we'll have the Q&A. You know, I'll say that if we get posed a question that we know that we'll cover later on in the presentation, we'll ask for that to sit. We'll just ask for it to be tabled so that we can continue on presenting the content. And we ask for that respect. But we do intend to answer the questions that are posed to us today. But I just wanted to remind the council that this has been a culmination of about 20 months of work that included this housing needs assessment, the push for additional funding, and this coordinated response. All right, so with that, I'll turn it over to Director Benson so that he can get going with us.
Go ahead.
Could we go back to the first slide, please, the goals slide? I think it's one more. Is there?
No, this is it. Just getting started.
All right. No, where's the goals slide?
We're not there
yet.
You
haven't shown it yet. Okay. Yeah, the thing, what I said in the beginning is I think we need to set our goals, and there are several presentations here that lead to different solutions, and what I think we need to do is set up a follow-up workshop. Instead of making additional decisions today, set up a follow-up workshop. There's no meeting on the 30th of May. I think we need to really digest this, talk to experts in the community, and figure out how we best use our resource. But the thing that we most need to argue and debate is what our goals should be. You mentioned them verbally. I heard them when I was in the back, and so I thought that slide was up. But those are the things that are worth figuring out because we have such little money compared to the overall need that we need to figure it out.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Council. Stephen Benson, City Planning Director. So as has been stated, we know the population of Tampa is growing significantly, and our housing stock itself is aging. But how does that compare? What is the context of that? So the last 10 years of growth in Tampa have seen a larger population increase than the 10 years prior. What does that mean? Compared to Hillsborough County, compared to the state of Florida, compared to the United States as a whole, we are in a unique position and we're being given a unique opportunity because the demand is here and the demand for more housing will continue to increase. And you have the ability to control where that housing goes and where that residential development is guided towards. In the past decade, more than 1,500 income-restricted units have expired. Those affordability periods have expired, but 1,800 new units were added. So that's a net of about 300 new affordable units. Those are all of the income-restricted units in the city. So think about the entire housing stock and the amount of those units that are actually income-restricted. It's very, very, very small. The housing stock is aging. Over half of our housing stock was built before 1990. And as far as the types of new housing that are being built, that new housing is yielding unit sizes that are pulling up the average size of a home. So even though the average household size itself is going down, right now we're at about 2.1 people per household, the average unit size is getting bigger. What does that translate to? It translates to a more expensive home for the same size family. And that is all due to redevelopment and due to infill with larger homes. There's currently obviously a mismatch between household incomes and the available and affordable units. But to afford a median-priced home in Tampa today, a household would need to earn over $150,000 per year. The area median income is less than 6 figures. That is an enormous gap. We know that renters are hurting more than homeowners, especially because homeowners do have the benefit of equity, whereas renters do not. The average Tampa resident is paying over half of their income on both housing and transportation combined. This is the gap. This is what the gap looks like for each of the income levels. Notice that each bar is cumulative, so it includes all of the income levels below it. The largest gap that exists is for the 0 to 50% AMI income level, and that gap is 26,153 units, and that is based upon 2021 data. I'm going to pass it off now to Ms. Henderson to speak to the impact of the fiscal year 2023 investments.
Yes, ma'am. Please state your name.
Good morning. Kayon Henderson, Director of Housing Community Development. So as Stephen mentioned, I'm going to go over what the fiscal impact was. So we certainly know where we are coming from, and so we're using that to build on where we're going. And so as we look at what decline in resources, over the past 5 years, the city has lost approximately 65% of its state and federal funding. And that's a huge gap that we have, right? So that used to assist households who needed help with rental or mortgage assistance, and most of that came from CARES funds as we were going through. And so the loss of the decline in resources, really this magnified the need for additional resources to provide that gap of immediate housing instability and then long-term affordability. And so here we've tried to grade out just what that looks like, where in FY21 we were getting about 44 million. On average, we get 15 million. In FY22-23, you'll see it went up a little bit to give us 22 million. That was as a direct result of we had fully expended our CARES funds, and so we got additional funds. But those funds have now gone, and so we're looking at an average of 15 million from state and federal. We came before for the last couple of quarterly updates to really show where those funds were going. We originally came with the housing buckets, and so we've changed it just based on who were we really assisting. And so during the last fiscal year, we've come before with the quarterly updates where we have the fourth and final quarter of fiscal 23. And so this shows the total impact we've had on the various programs. One of the things I want to mention is that while we started off with $26.5 million for our budget, we expended about $24.5 million. That does not mean we lose that $2 million. It rolls over into the current fiscal year that we have so that we can reprogram it. And so I want to say that specifically for the workforce housing, that's where we did not fully meet the full expenditure. And that is a combination of, at times, people, let's say for down payment assistance, cannot find a home within their price range, or they don't qualify for that first mortgage. So it's not that they don't qualify for the city's program, but it just takes a little bit more time. So being able to roll over those funds, we're then able to allocate them for the current year and move that forward. So during the budget cycle, we brought before just trying to really personalize and look at what that looks like as we have the update. And so here we've used persons to show who we're actually impacting. You'll see temporary housing. I know that was mentioned a little bit earlier. Making sure that we have that need for temporary housing for those individuals who are in between, that in between space. We do have protected populations that are served, helping those to be stable, whether that's renters or homeowners. Safe and quality housing, it does not have something there. We have done some infrastructure. The house is just not completed, and so we're not counting it as a success story until it's actually completed. You'll see we have workforce housing. We do have social services that we must provide as part of the federal grant. And then outside of Tampa, again, we receive funds for housing opportunity for persons with AIDS and HIV. City of Tampa received the funds for 4 surrounding counties, which is Pinellas, Hernando, and Pasco. And so we must use about $2.6 million average outside of the city Tampa limits to help those who are disabled with HIV or AIDS. So here you see where before we had the people that were served, and so here we're trying to show houses that we'll have for affordability. And so temporary housing, again, we show it here, where we were able to get 17 units, which will still be considered temporary housing, but it has a long-term affordability on it, which means that it must remain for that purpose for 20 years or more. For protected population, stabilization, and safe and quality housing, it also lists those numbers there also. You'll see where we have the asterisk for stabilization, where it is 13, and that will be because someone may have received $10,000, and so they don't have a 20-year affordability period, but a 5-year affordability period. Everything that we do and every program that we have, we do set an affordability period to protect the funds that we have provided and trying to ensure that it is indeed affordable. I will pause for questions
Any questions or
before I
comments
go
at
to
this
the
time?
next.
Go ahead, sir.
This was in Stephen's slide. He said there were like 1,800, I forgot the number, 1,800 units that expired, and then like 1,500, I forgot the numbers. But that, I don't think that includes where the West River project is going. I forgot how many units that was. And then also Tampa Park Apartments, that was private, but there was like 700 units there, correct?
I believe these are just the ones as of right now. They don't account for it going forward. I have the numbers for going forward, but this was looking back at the last decade.
Yeah, the point is that if you go back 10 years, there were hundreds, if not thousands of units that were taken offline because the incentive was to convert to market rate housing, and now we're at a deficit. We not only had the growth rate, but we also have a deficit because of those policies. Thank you.
That's correct.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions or comments? Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Next question, or what is the next section, the coordinated response?
Yes, so I am going to continue with the coordinated response. Land use policy changes will certainly allow for housing development to keep up with the population growth more broadly, but we still need market rate housing. And so the increased, the amount of funded that's dedicated to affordable housing as the need and costs have grown is something that we're also looking for as we look at how do we move forward. And so we've made some strategic improvements and focus to the funds on household that needs it the most, and really to look at what that subsidy amounts are as the costs have risen. So as we continue to see those rise, we want to make sure that we're addressing those needs. And so we've combined some programs, really including CRA programs to the HCD programs to be more efficient for the implementation and expending funds. And one of what that means for us is in the beginnings, programs such as down payment assistance or owner-occupied rehab, individuals used to have to worry about their geographical area and figure out where they apply for funds. And what we want to do is remove that barrier and say, you apply in one coordinated approach, and on the back end, we will worry about the geographical area. And so that reduces the barrier someone's moving in. We also want to look as we make these programmatic changes, it will really create, as I stated, efficiency in services, really across the city as a whole, and then also looking to leverage what CRA dollars are with the city funds. And so we will continue to identify the new priorities, we'll set quantitative goals, and really looking at this as a pre-pronged strategy for achieving those goals. And so we will look at the land use policy changes that will come up in a little bit. We're looking for increased dedicated funding. We know that we have 30 million of the CRA funds. To say that we are extremely grateful for the additional general funds, and then the 50 million general funds. And so we have received funds, $15 million for state and federal, but they're quite restrictive. And so having additional funds with less restrictions certainly allows us to address the need. And then just really looking at program improvements. We want to make sure that as we refine what those income requirements are and the programs, we want to make sure that we're touching the most vulnerable population. And so as we look at a targeted spend in a fund in which will result in more household being served and more units being created. And so as we continue to do that, we also want to make sure that as we get acquisition, we can have some targeted acquisition that can reduce impacts of gentrification and really stabilize at-risk neighborhoods.
You have, I believe, 3 slides after this, correct? Before it's Q&A?
That is correct.
All right, then I'm going to open it up to public comment. There are folks that want to speak. There was a lot here. The previous slides were yeah, it was, this is where like the meat is at. So I'll go to public comment after you finish the next few slides. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Sounds good.
Yes, sir.
Back on the CRA, 30 million, I think that's just for this year, right? Because there were no projects in the CRA districts, some of that money has been accumulating. Like now there's, I think, $5 million in the Ybor CRA. Is there an additional fund of money that wasn't spent in the previous year that is rolling over into CRA, or is it just the 30 million?
You want to take that?
Sure. So we are still rolling dollars forward from the CRA, but we're also still spending money actively in this fiscal cycle. So that's why you see at 30 million. Your allocation over the last 2 years has been close to 40 million. Okay.
Thank you.
So as mentioned earlier, there was a lofty goal of trying to get to 10,000 units by 2027. And so I'll keep it here for scale as I go on to the next slide. We realize that really to continue to move forward and really meet what that housing needs are, we need to increase recurrent city funds by $25 million annually. With the priorities and goals that we've identified, we need to be intentional and really have that targeted approach to get to our goals. And so with increased recurrent funds, this will allow us to reduce the racial homeownership gap and reduce the average cost burden for some of our most vulnerable population. And so here you'll see where we talk about reducing that racial homeownership gap, and we focused for moderate income and above medium by trying to reduce that by 50%, and we're looking at those who are 80% and above of the area median income. And then for low income households who are 51% to 80%, trying to reduce that homeownership gap by 25%. Here you'll notice that the 0 to 50% of the area median income is not listed, and majority of the times what happens is that they don't qualify for that primary mortgage, which then does not allow them to access our program. However, we realize that there's still a need for those, for that population who's 0 to 50%, and so you'll see we have our last bullet where we're really trying to reduce the average housing and transportation cost in Tampa below 50%, while making sure that no specific district is over 55% of average housing and transportation cost.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
I just had a quick question. If you could give us the numbers for the current area median income? Because I believe that's gone up.
Yes, that has gone up. I have that on a future slide.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, then.
So I will address that in
I believe it's 71,520.
For 80% area median income.
For 100% is 71,520? Yeah.
Councilman Carlson.
Yeah, this is the slide that I was referring to earlier, because I stepped out, I didn't see that the slide wasn't there, but Elise had referred to some of the information. This, I hope that we can, as a council, go back and discuss this and debate it and come up with our own goals. Just for the public's purpose, the first one, create or preserve, I think it was originally create, but now it's create and preserve 10,000 units. That was the mayor's goal. It should say the mayor's goal. It's not city, unless city council wants to vote in favor of that. It's an arbitrary goal. The Tampa Bay Times has done a story about it that has kind of debunked it as a valid goal. And so I think we need to look at some other measures that we can use, and there are some specific measures. I think number two, the dollar amount that we spend is significant, but that's not a goal. That's a tool to get to the goal. Number three, per my presentation also, I absolutely agree with these two. What we need to do is put in the numbers. What is, as I remember it, the African-American homeownership rate is 39%. And so if we're saying we wanted to go up to 60%, or if you want to put the numbers in, then that is a specific goal. I don't think we can make it to 60% by in the next 3 years, but we need to put goals that are reachable. And if we're talking about other racial groups, we need to talk about that as well. Low income, the same thing. We need to put the specific numbers in, but I think these are legitimate goals that we need to put in. We need to work on them. We need to figure out what's realistic, and we need to make sure that we define exactly what we mean and what exactly the numbers are, because we don't want a year or two from now a Tampa Bay Times story that says that we fudge the numbers, that we change the definitions. The last one, City Council does not really have control over transportation. There may be some small piece of it in the future based on what Councilmember Vieira said, but really what we need to do is drill this down into, if you're talking about the housing portion of the housing and transportation costs, then what we should do is say, what is the housing burden, and how do we, and then what is the exact number that we're trying to get? If you're talking about housing and transportation, then that would include probably reducing the housing costs, but also setting up preferential strategies to put housing near transportation hubs or near places where people work. So I just think we need to drill down more, not into the subcomponents, but we need to be more specific and define what we're going to do. And I think there are also other goals that we could add, which we can talk about later. Thank you.
Councilmember Clendon.
Yeah, I'm doubling down on a little bit on Councilman Carlson's point, and this may be premature in this conversation, but the slide kind of triggers it because it's got that goals on the top of it. As I'm looking, and maybe this is just me, but my observation since I've been on council since May, so it's relatively new, but I'm still very uncomfortable in this budgetary process of saying we're going to spend X amount of money. Or we're going to spend X percentages of money on something, as opposed to being presented with very specific projects that have goals with that project, and what it accomplishes, and how much that project costs, and how many people we're actually serving for that project, and what the actual, what the impact on the community, what the impact on the city is for that specific project. Because it just seems to me, I know it's anecdotal when we talk about government spending money. You throw enough money at it, you throw money at a project, you'll spend it. But I think I'm just so much more comfortable with that concept of show me a specific project, show me how many people that project's going to serve, show me, how many butts we have in beds, or how many houses we're renovating, or how many, what that's doing, and then how much it's going to cost, and then let's figure out as a council a way to pay for that. That's what I'm looking at this, and again, this is my uncomfortableness with a lot of these 30% of this, or, or 20 million here, or 17 million here, or, 40 million, or 50 million, or 100 million. What does that really mean? How does that translate to a very specific project? Give me the opportunity to weigh the benefits for the community on that specific project. The next question, and it goes back a little bit to, I think maybe it was Mr. Benson had discussed, and it goes further back to public comment. Do we have a vacancy assessment in the city of Tampa? Do we have a study of how many vacant apartments or vacant units currently exist? Because what I'm curious is, because I keep hearing anecdotally that we have these vacancies, and is this going to lead to maybe a market, a market adjustment?
The vacancy rates are constantly changing, and they've changed significantly even from the point in time that we began the housing needs assessment. So I have a data point. I have data that can be looked at, but it would be based upon that moment in time. So a lot of the comments that we've heard have been literally like, as of today, a vacancy rate is this. And I'm not saying that that's incorrect, but I would need to go back and pull that separately, not from the data that we already have that I prepared for you today.
Are there other entities that, I have to think that there's entities that do these studies regularly?
There are, some of them are, it's information that's regularly reported. It's not inclusive of every single unit in the city. It might be an estimate. There are companies that actually will call individual buildings and basically produce proprietary data based upon their own methods.
Right.
So those are the sources that we would be looking at moving forward, being able to use to kind of help guide, every step of the way. We would want to use that data and inform it, just like we're doing right now, based upon the data we've collected over the last several years.
All right. So what is the right now? What is your date, your point in time that you did this, and do you have what the data is?
I can
okay.
pull that.
I'm sorry to surprise you on that.
And if I may, while he searches for his information, I don't want us to get sidetracked too much on this vacancy piece, because I think that you probably have seen an article recently where the rental rates, they've stabilized somewhat and they've decreased 3%. But when the average rent is $2,000, that 3% decrease is only $60. So it's not really significant when you think about budget. On top of that, the inflation that people have experienced over the last few years relative to their other expenses. So, the market correction that we may be waiting for is not going to prevent us from still needing to support the creation and preservation of units. But I'll let Director Benson finish.
I may differ in that assessment, because I think as somebody who's witnessed housing bubbles in the past, the collapse of housing bubbles, we've seen significant adjustments in the past. So, I don't know, because I get the fact that statistics are always a rear view mirror.
Yeah.
It's very, a real statistic isn't forward thinking, so we have to look for that. Thank you.
Mr. Benson?
As of 2021, this is data reported from the Florida Housing Data Clearinghouse, which gives us the same benchmark across multiple jurisdictions. That's why we're still using that and not data as of today. It's about 9.7%. That was as of 2021, 9.7.
Thank you. Councilmember Henderson, Councilmember Moran.
Yes, Ms. Henderson, good morning. How did you all get to these quantitative targets? What made you decide on preserving or creating 10,000 units by 2027?
So that was the mayor's goal that she ran on, to create and preserve the 10,000 units by 2027. The rest of those goals that you'll see there are from the housing needs assessment. And so as we've looked at the housing needs assessment, and so one of the things I did want to touch on is that while the first goal is by 2027, the rest of those goals are beyond. So it's a long-term goal that we want to make sure that we get to.
Okay, thank you. So you're supporting the mayor's goal with that particular bullet point?
We've highlighted it here for scale, and on the next one, you'll see exactly why, just to show if we should get to 10,000, what it would take to get to 10,000 and beyond 10,000.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that the mayor's goal and our goal really is compromising on the same railroad line, getting to somewhere, wherever that somewhere is 10,000 or 900, 9,000 or whatever it is. But we have to understand that before you do all that, are we going to tear down units or rebuild units? Are we going to fix houses more often than not? Or do we have enough land to build it without doing anything and building 10,000 units? I think that building the land is more expensive, or finding the land to build the units is going to be harder than building the units. So what I'm saying is, are we prepared through our real estate department to find these land that's available to build these units without when we're competing with private enterprise, or are we counting private enterprises' numbers and our numbers? I'm not sure about all that. So these are the things that are in my mind, like Councilmember Clendenin just mentioned, that I'm all for this, but I think we got to before we put that horse in front of the cart, we got to find out where the horse is going. In other words, do we have the ability to find the land to build what we need to build? If we have the money to do it, And these are the things that are worrisome. I don't want to fool the public in any way, and I'm sure neither any council member or the mayor or you or anyone in the department. But I think we have to have a much more presentable, not criticize it. I really like what you all have done, but the second part of this is, where are we going to find the land, and how are we going to do it, and what are we tearing down to rebuild on? because we're competing not only with the time that we need to get these things done, but we also have competition with all the builders. So we have two animals that we got to look at: our goal and how do we compete, and where do we buy the land and how do we get it going.
Okay, and we'll talk about strategic.
And are we changing the zoning law so we can do things quicker?
I'll just add to that. Good morning, Council. Abby Feely. You know, it's a combination, right? It's a combination. We can't solve this issue alone, and we are not proposing that we do. It's a combination, and that's where in the past we've come to you with restricted funds that wouldn't allow us to engage in things like the budget in or other opportunities. And that's why partially we need to know how much we have in the bucket now so that we can start. We can't make deals happen if we don't know what's there to fund them. We must know so that when we're approaching either as an acquisition for ourselves as a city or in partnership with a developer, that there are X amount of funds that could support that deal. Those deals always then end up back in front of you. But if we have to wait to come before you till we know what the deal is, likely we're missing out on that deal. And that's been part of our problem from the beginning and how we've been addressing this, is that our bucket has been so small because it has been state and federal funding that had very large restrictions on it, and we've had these discussions, but now through the budget process, we've opened up a new bucket that gives us opportunities that we did not have before. And we do need to know, some of it is going to be tear down and rebuild. Robles Park is going to go away. There's an opportunity there. There's only 400 and some units there. We are working now to come back with 1,100 units there. You know, it is predominantly redevelopment opportunities for us as a city because we only have 4% vacant land. We're not like the county that has larger green areas where we can say, this is where this is gonna go and that's where that's gonna go. But we're positioning ourselves in a more strategic position for when those opportunities of redevelopment come about. We are at the table to be able to participate in that and make those larger acquisitions for the city that were not available to us for the past couple of years.
Well, thank you for that explanation. So I don't even know if we ever made a contract to buy something and hold it in abeyance. We don't know. We don't.
So that is another challenge. When we have to make certain things public, we are at the table with every other developer. We're just like anybody else. So by being able to have those funds that we know are in the pipeline to support our efforts, puts us in a far different position than if we were to have to come and say, oh, we see this deal, oh, this would be great. It becomes public, and then 5 developers just bought it for double what we would have bought it because we had to process it in that way. And that's been something that you all have been supportive of us being able to do, and the budget changes supported that as well.
I'm very, very proud of what you said because that's a reality. That's what we're facing. And it's not easy, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I go to Councilmember Hurtak, Ms. Feely, well, anybody, but you made a comment about the county. Are these same housing discussions happening down the street at County Center?
I will let Ms. Henderson speak to that.
No,
I'm
because-
aware that they have cut a lot of their funding and they're taking a different position. And I know that there's several people here who are more engaged with that, so I don't want to misspeak, but I believe their conversation is a little bit different.
Okay, no, because, you know, as you mentioned, Hillsborough County is very big. They have the land, and there's a lot of opportunity there. But that's Hillsborough County. We're the city of Tampa. We as a city council, and we're talking about numbers here, increasing recurring city resources for housing to $25 million annually by 2027. We as a city council, when we look at the budget, and we've done this since COVID, when this discussion really kicked off, we've allocated historical amounts of money towards housing. And like you said, we need the money in order to be ready when those opportunities come. We've been doing that, and I think we're going to continue to do that. Also, when we look at the land development code, we talk about ADUs, we talk about, what I want to see is that we get the most bang for our buck. If it's rental assistance for those who need it, we got the money allocated there. If it's rehabilitation, helping somebody fix up their home so they can stay in it and live in decency and you know, respectfully, we can do that. If it's new construction, you made a comment. Robles Park is coming down. I don't know what's going to happen there, but the opportunity for more housing in the future. I want to make sure that when we give you the money, we allocate, we budget, we approve the budget, that money gets spent wisely, because, I mean, as we've heard in public comment this morning, a lot of people are being affected in many different ways. You know, whether it's rental, whether it's permanent housing, whether it's down payment assistance, whatever it is, I just want to make sure that we get the most bang for our buck. Councilmember Hurtak, Councilmember Carlson.
First of all, I want to say that that I hope for the following sections that we actually wait till the Q&A, because otherwise we're going to be here till midnight. So first of all, we already had that rule, and then we stopped that rule. So if we could go back to that rule, starting with the next section, that would be great. Second, staff are experts. I am not an expert in housing. I've spent so much time learning about housing, but they know, and I absolutely trust that they are going to use our dollars as wisely as possible. It doesn't mean that we're not going to be looking over a lot of it, but we cannot micromanage housing. That's not possible. And I actually like Ms. Pointer's earlier observation of calling it a buffet, because each of us has a different priority up here. And I think that this presentation has talked about that priority, but we have to have every single part of the buffet. I don't like cottage cheese on a salad buffet, but somebody here does. No. And if we took that out, then, you know, well, somebody obviously likes it because it's on every buffet. Do you notice that?
My mom.
So, yeah, so there you go. Somebody loves that. It's not me, but it's somebody. And that's the thing that we need to think about. Every issue. But if we don't increase our budget, if we don't have a standard budget, they cannot plan. We cannot put out RFPs for things. If we can't say, hey, give us your great ideas because we have money to put towards something. We are not going to have developers come up with ideas and spend a year on it if they know we're not going to have the backing. They aren't going to do that. We aren't going to get any developers to come to us. And it doesn't even have to be we're putting money in. It can be simply the bonus density, things like that we're talking about. And it will take forever to create even 10,000 units if you have to come in front of us before the deal is made. You come to us generally when we're 65, 70% of the way done, because we trust you to do your jobs. And then if we don't like it, different story. You've talked to us, but we have the basics down. We cannot go backward. I fully and wholeheartedly support an annual budget so that you can plan to do your jobs, because we cannot. Most of these deals take years. And unfortunately, we're not going to get 10,000 units either preserved or created by 2027 just because of the length of time it takes to do things. I was shocked by that percentage of 4% vacant land. That is a huge statistic that we all need to carry in our heads. But I look forward to hearing the rest of this section. Thank you.
Councilmember Carlson, then Clendon, then we'll continue.
Yeah, just to respond to what my colleague just said, we have a whole bunch of housing experts in it, and it took 3 or 4 years to get them in. I'm glad we have them now. Unfortunately, we're behind even since I've been on council because we didn't have the staff, but now we do have great staff. But just like any organization, you take a company like Apple, they have brilliant innovators and brilliant engineers, and the engineers there have more experience than the board, but ultimately the board has to make decisions on focus. They have to decide, do you focus on the next iPad, or do you focus on the next iPhone, or do you focus on the next virtual reality thing? We have to we have to look at all the data and pick the direction that we're going to go in, and that is driven by goal. I agree with setting a recurring annual amount for housing. I think that's a strategy, not a goal. That's my point. One of the things that it concerns me is that, and I showed this in my slides earlier, is that the city has a preference for big deals. There was a lot of criticism in the past about the deal that was done with Domain Homes. There was a criticism about the 2 deals that were done with Related. Nothing negative about those 2 companies. They're great companies. But the public said, and especially the nonprofit sector said, why aren't you doing business with us? When the Funland deal was announced, $12 million, I had calls from nonprofit developers who said we could have built 2 or 3 times as many units if you all had reached out to us. Part of my concern about all this is the process we used. What we've been doing is responding to deals rather than holding RFPs. And I think we need to set a fixed amount. One of the deals that came to us recently was $375,000 per unit for affordable, for 80% AMI for 30 years. I talked to an affordable housing builder yesterday who said they could build single-family homes for $270,000. Why would we pay somebody $375,000 for 30 years of rent when we can pay $270,000 and let somebody own a home? We could just buy a home and give it to them. But for $100,000 or $120,000 each, we can buy them down to a mortgage of $150,000, which is the 80% AMI. And what we do if we work with the smaller developers is we get diversity of product, different kinds of product, different designs. We don't have concentration of poverty. We have geographic diversity. And we are supporting our community and the nonprofits in our community. So my question is, if the city staff had a choice between one developer with 1,000 units or 10 nonprofit developers who would build 100, which would we take? Would we work with the 10 developers, or would we work with 100 nonprofits to build 10 each, or are we only going to work with people that can build 1,000 units? That's the problem with the goal of 10,000.
Councilmember Clendenin, Councilmember Henderson.
So, just clarification, clearly we have we're going to start a budgetary process here shortly for fiscal year 25. So, I mean, we have to budget and allocate funds. I just want to make sure that there's an open and fluid discussion amongst the policy leaders in the city of Tampa about the type of projects that we're funding. And I don't necessarily know that if we have, with staff, much of a disagreement on that. But because we do have to budget, and there has to be some predictability with the percentages of our budget that we're devoting to different priorities and needs. I'm going to say something that's probably controversial, but create or preserve 10,000 units by 2027, bullshit. I mean, it's not happening. This is 3 years. This isn't happening. So let's just stop saying it. I mean, let's get real. What can we actually really do in the next 3 years? Somebody tell me there's a plan to develop 10,000 units in 3 years. I mean, it's just, we hadn't done it in the last 3 years. We probably haven't done it in the last 10 years. 400. So, I mean, it's just, let's get real about what that actually means. That was a political campaign, that created what is a policy, and we need to be honest about that. And if we keep repeating something that we can't be honest, we're not going to be able to achieve, then we're really just, we're just lying to everybody. So we're not going to create 10,000 units. And I mean, unless there's a pot of gold somewhere that I don't know exists, we're not going to be able to do that.
All right, Councilmember Henderson, your last comment, then we're going to continue.
Yeah, it really is just a follow-up for Councilman Carlson, because I like understanding even when comments are made up here. When you use the Funland example, that particular lot or plot of land was purchased by a developer and not us, which was a missed opportunity for a couple of $1 million, and then they turned around and sold it to, I think the Richmond Group is who got it, and then it came to council. So those type of housing developments are out of our control when we don't own the land, so we can't put out the RFP. We lose that opportunity in acquisitions like that. So I'm really not understanding your comment regarding that particular example, considering that it was never in our possession. When they came to us with an affordable housing plan. And I remember Councilman Hurtek saying, I want higher density because of housing that we need. But there was also a community piece to that said, no, we don't want those high rises in our neighborhood. So it's a difficult game to play. That would have been an opportunity to increase housing to get to this goal. But I'm just trying to understand, that particular comment as it relates to that, especially considering that we did not buy the Funland property. And I think we had an opportunity, the CRA, that would have been a wonderful acquisition for us, but we missed that opportunity.
Can I just respond quickly?
Yeah, I just.
The point is that we think about it through the wrong end. Because of the edifice complex, we think about doing deals. And instead, we need to figure out how much are we willing, for example, the developer that came to us a few months ago said $14,375,000 per affordable unit for 30 years, 80% AMI. How much are we willing to pay for that? I would say, especially if you compare it to helping people buy a home, we shouldn't pay more than $150,000 as a subsidy per unit for 80% AMI. And the thing we're fighting for here is how many people are we gonna serve? Are we gonna serve a lower number of people or higher? The less we spend, the more people we can serve. And so if we had an RFP where we said, we're gonna provide 150,000, and I'm making up the number, but if we say 150,000 per affordable unit rent guaranteed, 80% MII for 30 years, anybody who wants to get that subsidy, come to us. We'll have a whole bunch of individual nonprofits and for-profits coming to us saying, we're gonna build duplexes, quads, others all throughout the city, and we're gonna innovate and create different designs and styles, and we'll be able to do lots of contracts like that, instead of just waiting for or focusing on massive projects that help us get to 10,000 faster.
Can I respond?
Go ahead.
Thank you. The problem with $150,000 is then you have to divide it by 30 years. You're not just buying one door for one family. You're providing housing for 30 years for many different families. And when you divide it by 30 years, first of all, what they're going to be talking about the fact that we're not going to do 30-year deals anymore. We're looking for much longer deals. And so that has to be part of and again, they're going to talk about it, so I don't want to talk too much more about it. But the fact that our second infill program did include, and in fact, they went out to find small individual developers. And this third infill program is focused on building dense housing, and they opened it up to everybody. So they are doing both the small deals and the larger deals. But I agree, we need to diversify that 100%. But we've already started that process.
All right, yes, ma'am, continue on.
So here you'll see where we are talking about what the achievable targets are to address the actual need. And so on the previous slide, we had 10,000, and it was for scale for this table. And so this table really here is showing the mayor's goal for 10,000. We know that it isn't enough from the housing needs assessment. Here we are, we've kept this metric on how much it would cost to really get there. And so you'll see it broken down by each income bracket, what the average subsidy per unit is that's required. And this is really just based on data that we've had in the past. And so you'll see there from the 0 to 50% AMI, we have broken that down, saying that while we knew that the original sub target was about 3,000, we have stated that we know that we need really closer to 6,000 units. And so for the 30% AMI and below, there's 60 units underway, and realizing that we still have a goal to meet of 3,869. And just getting to that goal alone, we would need about $1.2 billion. And so we then go to the very low income, the low income, and what that looks like for also workforce housing. So while we know that 10,000 is the goal that was set, we know that it is more than double this amount. So really for us to get to what the housing needs assessment says that we would need close to $5 billion to get to what we actually need for the missing gap. Here we have, during the second quarter, Administrator Travis came before at the time with the quarterly update as well as these housing priorities. These were our updated housing priorities. We brought these before, I think it was May of last year, May 2023, and this really creates the foundation that allows us for the funding that's allocated to have a really greater target goal as the population continues to grow. So Director Benson mentioned what that population growth looks like, and so we really expect to see a 20% growth by 2030. And so these are the 5 priorities that we've really tried to look at and focus on. We know that we need to expand temporary housing. There just isn't enough temporary housing here in the city of Tampa. And we realize that we have to still meet those emergency housing needs for those who are displaced or homeless. We also believe in prioritizing seniors, those with disabilities, and the protected populations. We also want to make sure that we stabilize the renters and homeowners really in low income and majority minority neighborhoods and who are vulnerable to displacement and gentrification. We realize that homeownership isn't for everybody, but we also have to protect those who are renters and homeowners. So 80% or below, really safeguarding those programs to make sure that they still have safe and quality housing, and leveraging city resources to fill the gap for those who are workforce housing, who are looking to purchase, who are between that 80 to 140% AMI. And I will pause here for
Councilman
questions.
Vieira, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you all again for that portion of the presentation. It was really good. Just a couple of notes I wrote down during it. You know, I wanted to speak to something Councilwoman Hurtak said that I agree with, which is on setting those funds there, in other words, letting the experts do what the experts are going to do. It's funny, we talk about public policy, there's issues that people tend to get involved in, et cetera. I don't consider myself an expert on anything. I'm just a guy with a reckoning and a passion, and that's it, right? On certain things. My undergraduate's in U.S. history, then I'm an attorney for 21 years. Maybe I'm an expert, I don't know. But we're sailing, as the song goes, against the wind of Florida. We're in the middle of a top category hurricane in Florida, and this city, municipal government that serves 400,000 people, is trying to do everything that we can to, sail against that wind of that category 5 hurricane. And we need to rely on our experts, let our experts do what they're going to do, but obviously talk about our vision, talk about the journey that we want to see, and have oversight. I think that's a very, very careful balance, but appropriate those funds. Something was talked about with regards to at-risk individuals, talking about seniors, those with disabilities, et cetera. There's a thought that a rising tide is going to lift all boats, if we appropriate a lot of money for housing, then it's going to benefit everybody. But these are populations for whom special care and intervention is required. I strongly do support targeted efforts to deal with our seniors, to deal with those with disabilities, whether they're physical disabilities, intellectual disabilities, talking about independent living, like Karen Clay talked about, for people with disabilities, the journey that a person with an intellectual disability being raised by a family takes to have independent living, whether it's in a group home, an apartment, et cetera. It's a very emotional one, and it's an impossible one. I talk to families that do relatively well, they're middle class, and they can't afford an apartment of independent living for their son or daughter with an intellectual disability. That rising tide is not going to lift those boats. If we dedicate a lot of money, it's not going to touch that population. And there's a lot of other populations we could be talking about, returning citizens, those who just want to work hard and put food on the table for their families, et cetera. Again, very unique circumstances. We talk a lot about renting versus home ownership. We're in the middle of a crisis. For some people, if they're drowning, you get them a boat. For other people, you get them a life jacket, right? We should have robust attention and budgetary resources given to both of them. We're in the middle of a crisis, and I think the biggest thing that we have to do is continue to go with a robust investment. I think about, and I'm going to butcher this quote from Franklin Roosevelt, but said, what is it? Better a government. It's essentially, this is better. I'm going to butcher this, but better a government that does what it can to help people with occasional mistakes than a government stuck in its ice cold indifference. The city of Tampa is not stuck in its ice cold indifference. I think we're going to continue to go out there and make investments to help people. We're going to do some which are going to be new and innovative and experiments, some which are going to be tried and true, and we're going to make mistakes. But I think the real proper thing to do is to continue forward with that vision, particularly with, again, attention given to those groups that need special attention, those with disabilities or seniors and others for whom that rising tide is not going to lift their sinking boats. Thank you.
I would like to go to public comment. Councilmember Hurtak, Clendon, and then public comment.
Can you please go back one slide? So I want us all to focus on subsidy per unit, where we look at extremely low income, 30% AMI and below. The cost per door is $302,000. That's just not really, we cannot put cash toward that. But here's the great thing. That does not mean $302,000 in cash. That's where Mr. Hagan was talking earlier about bonus density being in lieu instead of cash, or other types of ways. Maybe we're providing infrastructure, maybe we're providing the land. So I just want everybody to understand that just because it's $302,000 per door, it doesn't have to be cash. And that is why we're here, to go back to that beginning, the coordinated response. If you go back 2 more slides to this, where we're touching every single part. And that will help us to reach that 302,000. I don't want us to leave this thinking, oh my God, we're never gonna get there, because by a combination of all these things, we're gonna be closer. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Go back to your priorities slide. I think this actually, and I know you said following goals, I would have loved to have seen this updated housing goals, because I think this looks more like goals than priorities. So this was a good goal slide, and I think especially bullets 1, 2, and 3, I think are really good focuses for us. It gets a little weird and iffy because we talk about the devils in the details on 4 and 5, but 1, 2, and 3 absolutely should be part of our goals and our priorities for the city of Tampa. Earlier, in the very, very beginning of this discussion, they talked about meeting the housing needs. I think that really the question should be asked, can the city of Tampa meet the housing needs? And I'm just going to jump ahead and guess that everybody that understands this process is going to say the answer is no. You know, we can take proof positive steps to, you know, get on a path to try to get closer to those needs. But there's no way in the world with the limited resources, limited land opportunities, limited everything that we have. The honest answer is we're never going to meet, the city of Tampa as a government body is never going to meet the housing needs that we have. Hopefully we'll have some market corrections. The free market will be involved. We'll be able to have some of the creative ideas that we have to get us into some better places and to be able to serve as many people as we possibly can and help as many people as we possibly can. But the honest answer is we're never going to meet the needs on our own. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to pause and go to public comment. If you wish to speak, please come up, state your name.
No, come on. Yeah.
All right, Mr. Drumgo, your comments, and then we'll kick off public comment.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to it. I just wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, because I know there was some conversation about the unit count, right? And that 10,000 being a goal. Listen, I know personally that I would like to lose 40 pounds, but if I lose 10, right, I'll be better off. So I think amongst this group, if there's some desire to, you know, propose a revision to that number, like, you know, feel free to share that with us. But we know that we certainly need greater than 25,000 units, right? But then the other thing that I just like to say is when you're thinking about the subsidies in those deals, on the most recent deal with $12 million with the Funland project, you know, that's $33,000 a unit on that subsidy. And so when you think about other funding resources that get stacked in there, you heard an affordable housing developer speak to you during public comment. He said, we leverage these dollars when you kick in somewhere between 7 and 40 to 1. So when we're asking, you know, we realize we have this infusion of $50 million this year, but we're talking about how to spend that money this year, right, and how to spend those dollars. But then in the other slide, you saw a $25 million number, because we know that it's unattainable to try to spend, you know, $200, $300, $400, $500 million a year. So we're trying to back into a number so that we have some certainty for developers to go out and recruit those partners to come in to help us leverage those dollars. So I just wanted to speak to that. And the deal you saw before the CRA, people know that you have money in your CRA, which is why they continue to ask the CRA for money. And so just because that deal comes before you where they're asking for that $14 million, you have to understand, and you'll get a primer from Director Henderson later on capital stacking, but every deal is not the same. And when they're looking at the gap between the market rate and what was asked for relative to the affordability, that gap is what needs to get filled. And that's why that dollar value per unit was so high. You also have to keep in mind that construction by type is very different as well, depending on whether you're building a 2-story, a 4-story, a 6 to 7-story structure, and where that gets placed. So all of those things really impact those development costs. I ask that when we continue to get into this conversation about costs and subsidies, that you just keep in mind that our goal is to try to offset those development costs, whether it is the land, impact fees, or some other dollar values that we may have available. So, but I'll cede to the public.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name.
Thank you. Hi, Kimberly Overman. Thank you, Elise. That was actually a perfect lead into what I was going to suggest. the challenge we've had in using that $10,000 unit, 10,000 unit, or the fact that we've got 25 or 125,000 units shy of what's needed in the community is that we're in a boat that has a gigantic hole in it. And part of that hole can be filled with some permanency. When we provide resources, like the Housing Finance Authority does when financing deals, those deals are done for perpetuity, not for 30 years. You heard earlier you lost 1,500 units. You built 1,800, but now you really only net 300 because of the expiration of the land use agreements. A community land trust where the city has dollars to be able to go buy properties and put it in a trust to keep it for perpetuity that's affordable for the community is a way of putting a Band-Aid on a hole in the bottom of the boat. It won't hold because there's a lot of other things that need to be done too. But it's one way of slowing the water going in so that everybody in communities that are at risk, our seniors, our veterans, our people with disabilities, actually don't drown because they don't have not only the boat, but they don't have the life jacket either. So I think it's really important that we look at all of the solutions, recognizing that home ownership isn't a goal, and it's the American dream, but it is also a way of actually creating some stability in the housing marketplace. And if our investors can call up every single person that owns a piece of property and ask them, will you sell me your house? And the senior who can't afford to fix that house is put in a position where they're looking at, well, yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to do this because I can't afford to stay in it anymore. Being able to stabilize houses in aging communities or in aging housing is a way of stabilizing that community as well as paying for the stability of that community. If you're able to help that family member stay in that home. And that is less costly than new development, whether it be single family or multifamily, because you're able to stabilize a community that needs that social structure to function well. So thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name.
Connie Burton. Communities such as Tampa Park Apartments, Central Park Village, and perhaps Robles Park is seeing an increased redevelopment. And the question asked is where are the families that live below the poverty level of, say, maybe $29,000 a year? When you even talk about the property over there at the new Funland Drive-In, only 6, not 60, 6 units were going to be set aside for families for 3-bedroom size. So that tells me how unwelcoming those communities and developers are. The problem is that I see happening today is that, of course, staff has done brilliant work, and we might get tied down with a lot of paperwork. But at the end of the day, the community is looking to see a model. A model. In East Tampa, for example, we have undeveloped lots that has been laid dormant for over 8 years. Right now, change of policy, zoning, let's get something done. Property that the CRA purchased, unless the staff was selling us swamp land. We got property over there on 19th off of Palafox. We have also brand new property that's built over there on Osborne. Something that can be done now. To ask us to continue wait is an insult. Since Belma Heights was created in 1911, we have seen very, very little take place that moved the needle economically for our community. And so when you're talking about houses coming inside of some of these communities that is at a different AMI, those are not people that have suffered. And I think what I'm hearing today and what is raising my frustration is at the end of all of this discussion today, there won't be an actual model that the staff is ready to go on. Right now in our CRA in East Tampa, a little bit of money, $24 million that we have never been able to utilize to the best usage of our community, that can take care of some housing rehab. Now, make a rule right now that you're gonna end some of those barriers so we can get started.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Please state your name.
Good afternoon. My name is Nathan Hagan. I want to start off by saying I believe in you. I believe that you have the power to achieve these goals and to end a permanent affordable housing crisis. It's only permanent until we choose to change that. There are things that we can do, and the only way that we fail to do them is if we say that we refuse to do them. So I want to go back to this. This has probably confused a lot of people. It's very technical. You can talk about this for an hour, but I want to highlight something.
Let's bring up the overhead.
Yeah, sorry.
There we go. Go ahead, sir.
So I just want to highlight what's going on here. There is a shortage of 26,000 units. These people have homes. Where are they buying their home? Where are they living? They're living in the income pools here. So when we say we have actually only a 235 unit shortage on 100% up for people who are between 0 and 120% AMI, it doesn't mean that people at 120% AMI are paying rent appropriate for 120% AMI. It means that people in this group, the gap here, these people are paying more. They're competing in this pool. And I'll tell you my experience. I've been lucky enough at some points in the last couple of years to pay less than 30% of my income on housing. I'm competing here too, and I'm higher income. So this area, this pool of housing is under a lot of pressure. It's under pressure because people in lower income categories are competing for it, people in this category are competing for it, and people who are above the category are competing for it. Do not assume that because there's 100 people at 120% AMI and 100 homes that everybody's allocating correctly. We have a housing shortage. This is why part of the strategy, we need to be focusing on solving this issue, but part of solving this issue is actually building housing for people up here so they're not competing in here anymore. This is an issue that affects every single type of housing in the city. We cannot only focus on subsidized below market units. The bonus density program is very special because it does this. It creates housing for people dedicated for people like this at a price they can afford, and it creates housing for people like this so they don't come into markets like this and outcompete lower income people. It reduces pressure on this category of housing from both sides. So there are some really creative ideas. We can unleash the market. We can do whatever we want. There's so many ideas that can cause us to achieve our goals. To throw up our hands now, I mean, that's the most disheartening idea I can imagine right now, so please don't.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Yes, sir. Please state your name.
Got it. Andy Joe Scagnan, I've got to catch a plane. Thank you very much. Well, as much as the talented staff that we have here, they're not miracle workers, okay? And I think we need to be honest with the public and honest with ourselves, as it's been said, that to build 4,000 units until 2027, that would be 111 units per month. We're not going to get there. And we don't have $1.68 billion. To build 26,000, we'd have $5 billion. We don't have $5 billion. Let's be honest, okay? We can incentivize supply and be result-oriented. It's all about execution. I don't want to make the same mistake. Sometimes it's best, as St. Pete did across just recently in January, their St. Pete Council. They put a $12 million exorbitant subsidy for 24 units. That's $500,000 per unit. That's not what we want to do here, okay? So I'm going to go through these papers, my notes here. I have a lot of notes. Real estate, I'm going to hit upon real estate, about acquiring land. That's something I've been involved in for 38 years, okay? We need to tie up land, and we call it a free look period. Feasibility study is another name for it, okay? Tie it up, do our feasibility, and then find out if we want to buy it. We can't do it the other way around that we've been doing it for historic, because the private sector will eat your lunch, okay? They'll buy it and then try to sell it to you. at a profit, okay? So let's change our way of thinking here as the private sector. I'll help with that. I mean, I've been offering it for 3-4 years. And when you only got 4% of land area, I mean, I don't see how you're gonna acquire any land when you got the private sector out there and builders just beating on doors. So again, let's just be honest with ourselves. The focus needs to be spending some of the CRA funds. That's money that we already have versus general revenue, that we have so many other needs in public safety. And I'm gonna hit upon real quick the land trusts, because I've been involved in land trusts financing for over 35 years. It makes no sense to do a land trust when it comes to single family. The market of comparables aren't gonna be there. The financing is gonna be very tough, and it's gonna create a second layer of citizens. Everything's public today. People are gonna say, well, you don't even own the land your home is built on. It would make no sense, okay?
Thank you very much, sir.
Can I say one more thing about the pro forma?
Wrap it up. Yes, sir.
I've been here 4 hours and, okay, the pro forma that was done. This pro forma, at 150 units, it doesn't make, and let me the land cost is a good land cost, 66,000 a unit. Your construction costs and your soft costs come out to be about 266. You can't do frame, what we call stick today, for 266. You're looking at over 3. And that's with doing surface parking, stick housing. So this pro forma is based on a 4.5% capitalization rate. Prime today is 8.5. These numbers are back in 2021, before we've had the historical interest rates.
Thank you very much,
This
sir.
negative leverage never works in real estate.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Please state your name.
Again, for the record, Dr. Michelle Williams. And my great-grandmother, who I always had a privilege when I came from Haiti to visit her in Laymount, Florida, as you all know, it's Tallahassee, Florida. She always said that a hot knife cuts better on butter, okay? So I written this while I waited for the second term of public comments, because what the young man spoke about 48 minutes ago, I seen the great passion of frustration that in his era, he should not be speaking about the same things that my elders, like Miss Connie Burton and the others who sit behind me, Miss Chloe Coney, we shouldn't be having this same conversation. And the conversation gets worse and worse each time that we have it, with no true reconciliation of solving anything. I don't like circus shows. I don't like, and nor do I do dog and pony shows. This is hurtful that I see so many coming. How do you want us next time? On our knees coming in the door? Because my elders should not have to have this conversation again. Now it falls on the plate of their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I'm a grandmother of 7. I'm closer to 60 than I am 50, if you all know that. I know I look good for my age. The housing crisis in Tampa is a cross that our community bears, a symbol of broader challenges of economic disparity and social injustice. Dr. King put it so eloquently: injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The stark reality of unaffordable housing and unchecked rent increases serves as a stark reminder of the work that remains to be done. It is not merely a matter of economic policy, but moral imperative that speaks to the core of the values as us in our society. A call to action. The time for deliberation has passed. The fierce urgency of now demands action. bold and decisive to safeguard the future of our city it inhabits. We must rally together as a community, ununified in purposes, to advocate the policies that ensure affordable housing and rent stabilization. Now, let me tell you something. Y'all don't never see me down here like I used to be down here. If I'm coming, you got a problem.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name.
Yeah, Humira Afzal, and I'm going to save most of my comments for the next section, but I was a bit troubled by the fact that I heard coming from you guys that what is County Commission doing? Which troubles me, because you need to know what the county is doing. I'm sure staff does, but I will tell you they are axing affordable housing from every possible angle. So if you are not following what they're doing, it's many of the people who came here today are also going to the county commissions. If you're not already following the devastation that county commission is wreaking on affordable housing, please make sure you are, because it's very dire. And please, again, this is a crisis. You can't just throw up your hands and say, this is too complicated. You have to address it. No more continuation, and we'll talk about it some more. We need action, not talk.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name.
Hello, my name is Sally Yassi Lee with the Volunteer Missionary Society, and I'm so happy that I walked 5,250 miles, been added on for homelessness and housing. I've done my part, and I would like to say we need a proposal seeing how many units for each group, independent returning citizen home ownership, and the budgetary resources. And we need how many units for each one of those. And can we find houses at $75,000, $150,000? Not all that. And we need to rehab. Do you know what it's like to try to call rehab? I've called those people 50 times, called up here about 35 times. This was 2 years ago. Nobody answers, nobody returns your call. And it's sad, like the lady said, and we need to figure all this out and put it into a proposal and try to find some cheap houses and get a plan for senior citizen houses, no more than 125, 200, and 300, because you don't know what the new bills coming out in Washington. They cutting out people's subsidies. How you gonna pay? You fixing to be homeless if you can't pay 800, 900. That's too much for us citizens to pay. I'm a senior too. I'm speaking for myself. Do you know how hard it is for us to get what we need to be senior citizens and just black folks in general? And we need to figure out how many, with all this property, how many rehabs, try to call them, and just really get busy on this. This is something we really need, especially us seniors. And I hope we can work it out and come up with cheap homes for seniors to live in, and just do what we can and come together and unite and get this done, please, sir, and women and council women and men. Please help us seniors and everybody else in the $75,000, $150,000 range. God be with y'all. Please make an effect and do something about the cost of living for rent, please.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name.
Good morning. First of all, I want to say thank you for approving this housing study. Say thank you to the staff and the team for all of the hard work they put in this. Understanding that your responsibility is to trust, but also verify. This staff not only has to deal with the housing crisis, but the other myriad of city issues. And so they're not infallible, so it takes for us to be able to monitor and to help them to be able to do the very best job that they can. a couple of questions. So we have on the achievable targets to address the need under the units underway, had a question. So the Funland, I was very active in that discussion, was 120% AMI, had over 300 units. But under the workforce 80 to 140, it only has 38 underway. So we want to make sure that those are actually put in accountable in the areas in which it should be. So I don't know where the Funland units are. Also, we have under the updated housing priorities, leverage city resources to fill the gap in funding for workforce housing, 80% to 140. In East Tampa, our AMI is about 25,000. So I want to know, does the CDBG plan and the SHIP plan, are they being coordinated to be in line with what the housing plans are to make sure that those incentives and the ability to layer for the people who are investing in creating affordable housing? Will we also make sure that the CDBG plan and the SHIP plan are in line to make sure, because we have the money coming from the CRA, and with the new and updated model for the CRA, the community is not as informed. We have the meeting for the CACs, but the information for that information comes after the meeting. We're able to get it there. So we're not able to prepare our comments and be able to actively participate like when we had the committees to understand what were those discussions that would come before you, this city council sitting as the CRA. So several questions to make sure, how does the community make sure they monitor or at least participate in the use of the CRA funds on there? So those are the few questions that I have on that section, because if we are going to focus on the workforce housing, 80% to 140, whereas the average median income in East Tampa is $25,000, and that's with a $15 an hour job. Someone's working 40 to 50 hours a week at 15 hours an hour. They're going to be bringing home at least $25,000. Where do they find fulfilling this leverage of the resources for the workforce housing?
Thank you very much, ma'am. Yes, sir, please state your name.
Hey there, my name's Bobby Creighton. I live in Tampa. I was going to use the overhead. I don't know if
Go
I have to
ahead, put
turn it on.
whatever you need, and then it'll turn on. Like magic. There you go, sir.
Okay.
If you want to zoom in so we can see it better.
Yeah, how do we do that?
There we go.
There we go.
Thank you, sir.
So we talked about how this is a buffet and there's lots of different options to choose from, and so may be more palatable than others to different council members. For me, thinking about the changes in the comp plan with the affordable housing bonuses and the changes that we can make in the land development code, for me, that's my cottage cheese. We need blueberries, strawberries, and honey on top of that too, because we talked about how for this lowest income bracket here, that number, over $300,000 to subsidize that, and how part of that comes in with the affordable housing bonus. To me, it's really important to think about what that actually does in terms of changing the built environment in the city. We think about how land use and transportation are really two sides of the same coin. They're codependent variables that influence one another in different ways. So when we're thinking about, we talked about the county a little bit too. I'm a nerd, so I love maps. I'm going to pull up a couple of maps here. We think about how the density in the city and the county will change as new people come. The city's going to get about 400 new residents per month. Where do we put all those people without them spilling out into the county, spreading out the resources that we have where we get less bang for our buck over time? And we can see a lot of the new development is outside of the city limits. We have a nice little patch there kind of surrounding downtown and up by USF, but even though the rate of population growth is going faster in Tampa, the vast majority of people moving to the area are going to be coming to outside of the city. It's also important to think about where those people will be traveling. This is a map of where the new job growth is expected to go in the city, and you can see it's all within kind of the urban service area. The dotted blue line is the city of Tampa. So we have to think about how are those people getting around? How are those people traveling to these jobs from outside the county, from inside the city? And that's why I think it's so important to realize the potential. My clock's not going, I just realized that. It's so important to realize the potential of the affordable housing bonus and these bonuses where we can add more density. You hear this phrase, density is destiny. So when we're thinking about how our city is changing and the different ways we can fit people here and the different ways that they can afford to live here, please be very mindful that the land development code needs to be streamlined to the max so that we can take full advantage of that potential. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name.
Alice Moore with Florida Rising, as you once heard me say, a longtime resident of Tampa, Florida. I'm speaking a lot of times, we talk about the seniors, and there are a number of set of seniors that we're bypassing. That's in the middle income. A lot of the people have had to take care of their grandchildren, been forced to sell their houses because of life and the situations have. I have 6 grandchildren. I've taken care of each set at different times, which means you start over. Because in the middle income, you don't qualify any of the other things that's offered, food stamps and whatever. You don't qualify for that, but you're still dropping. Taking care of kids from 3-year-old to 10 years old, that's really dropping a lot. You think about having to sell your house, not to mention the repairs that's having to come into it. So really, seniors in the areas having a hard time in the middle income. They're dropping down to the other income, but because you do your paperwork, it doesn't show. It means that you're still making more, but you have suffered by having your grandchildren and your children, basically grandchildren, because you don't want to see them go in a housing situation. So you make it the possibility to do, not possibility, you make it to do it. And you're talking about starting on with elementary, nursing care. It's really hard. It's taking from their money. So they're suffering too. That's the set of people that's really hurting. They can't go anywhere and ask for any support because they wouldn't qualify anyway. So to be able to help these folks, to save their houses, to be able to help them to be able to get around. You're talking about independent people who have worked, made their years in life and everything. And you're making them suffer, well, you per se, making them suffer to have to do. And again, for seniors, it's really hard, but for the middle class seniors, it's equally hard. And they're having a time. So please, you need to look out, check, and as I say, the city is changing. You got a set of apartments that people were forced, they were gonna build a baseball stadium, and those apartments still looking, and they were under HUD. They're still empty. And we were talking about places to start. They're sitting there. Look how many people we can have living in those places again. I don't know where, I think someone said HUD dropped their supply, and I'm talking about the ones right there, 7th Avenue and 7th Avenue and Nebraska intersects. Those have been sitting there ever since they started discussing a baseball field. And it has never happened. They're still empty. That would help a lot of folks. Talking about doing, all you have to do is go in and remodel it. And they'll be able to do it because it's been sitting empty. So you know it's rat infested and everything. But it doesn't take that much money to do that to help a lot of those folks. It's just, as you say, the buildings, those apartments sitting there, and those people were forced to move out. And there was some seniors living in those places that was able to help them as well. And this is something we need to look at and can be done immediately. Doesn't have to wait. It could be done immediately.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Yes, sir, Mr. Coleman. Please state your name.
Good morning, Dave Coleman. And this morning I heard the words that we're going to have to look to state and federal aid for more funds and regulation changes. And then that same concept kind of followed through to the first slide that was presented this morning. Getting there. Where it talked about what Bobby was just talking about, land development code updates and reform. And I have recently, I attend a lot of meetings. I recently attended the second Sulphur Springs meeting, which the first one had 30 people, and it was an incredible meeting. And then just last week, there was another meeting, and it was double the amount of people. And it was all about ADUs. And as I left the meeting, I was still a little confused. And I asked a learned person in this room. So in Sulphur Springs, they were saying that you can't live in the back of the house and rent out the front of the house, and it has to be a family member. And there was a question of whether you could charge rent at all. And those questions weren't answered in my mind at that meeting completely. And what I'm getting at is that ADUs would be an absolute essential part of the puzzle, this salad smorgasbord that you're all talking about, and needs to be followed through with more information, getting out to the public about what it is. There's a woman sitting there next to me saying, I have 80 grand in the bank and I'm ready to do it, I just don't know how. All right, so that needs to be gotten out. As far as Karen Clay goes, I just left the $100 million Hannah project building, and I went to leave with my cane, and I went to hit the button to open the door, and as you leave your $100 million building, it's on the wrong side. I go to the door on the right-hand side to exit, and the button's on the left, and I couldn't find it. It's a boondoggle from it. I mean, come on, get the front door right anyway. And I've been having this thought that the county has $2.3 billion sitting, that's more than your budget, sitting in a savings account. They could take $3.3 billion, which would be $300 million, and build 3 Hannah projects. I've never been in that building before, and I was there the other day, and I'm looking at the size and the scope of this building, and I asked the person at the desk, is this place full? And he said 75%. Well, I want you to go to the county and ask them to build 3 Hannah Avenue projects and put seniors in there. I keep getting requests to go over and live, to live at J.L. Young. I'm beginning to figure out that nobody wants to go there. That's why they keep offering it to me. It's a prison cell of cinder block walls with electric wiring on external pipes and a falling apart kitchen and a bathroom in a one-room freaking cinder block room. It's a freaking prison cell. And I said, I'll go there when I have to for 1/3 of my income, but I'm going to hold off in the trailer I'm in for falling apart as long as I possibly can.
Thank you very much, sir.
We can change things. Do it.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. And then we have one person registered online, which is Carol Ann Bennett. Yes, Ms. Lockett, please state your name. I know your name, but for the record.
Robin Lockett. I'm gonna read something quickly. Though we remain committed to facilitating the creation of new units, not everybody is ready to be a homeowner, for home ownership. It is important for our city to offer residents a variety of options, like multifamily rental developments, or perhaps expand access to accessory dwelling units. With our society and household dynamics continuously evolving, we must open to explore possible zoning, and we're talking about that, land use and policy changes in order to address these crises. We are in a housing crisis. The market has expanded. It's too much for, in regards to buying homes. That's an issue. Rentals are an issue. This whole thing, right? In life, this situation is a puzzle, and everybody has a piece. Not for one to be smaller or the other. What we're doing is placing a piece of paper out and making the pieces fit. Not forcefully, but making it fit. I fight for the working person that has 2 jobs. I fight for the elderly, the disabled on fixed income. Not everyone is going to own a home. I was a homeowner. I rent now, but that's by choice. The elderly, the seniors, they may have owned a home, and they no longer can. It's a lot to do, right? Taxes, upkeep. That's why you have a rehab program. So with this, I came down last week or a couple weeks ago and talked about the lens. We have to be able to take a step back and look at things from a different lens. We fought hard to get that money into that budget, $12 million, and y'all were happy, everybody was Don't backstep. Don't start nitpicking. Nicole Travis, her team, Elise, and everybody has done a great job. This is great work. Allow them to put this into action. Allow them to put it in action. When we start talking about what if we need to, this is the plan, but they need money. The city of Tampa has not put, the COVID provided evidence that we've been struggling a whole long, it just unveiled it. It revealed it, that this is a problem to begin with, that we were complaining about. Now we have an opportunity to step outside of the box, be creative, and let it go. So I'll be back up again.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. We have Carol Ann Bennett online. Miss Bennett, if you're on, please unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes. She will be the final speaker for this round, and then we'll break for lunch. Carol Ann Bennett, if you're on.
Hi. Hi, my name's Carol Ann Bennett. I want to comment. I was happy that Councilwoman Henderson brought up the Funland problem with the density. And I remember Councilwoman Hurtak's objection to it, and I absolutely agreed with Councilwoman Hurtak. We can have density that everybody can agree on if it's done smartly. It's the stupid density that creates the problem. So Councilwoman Hurtak was advocating for more density, but what she wanted was more stories on Hillsborough Avenue, so that you had, you didn't have these looming vulture-like high-rises hanging over someone's single-family home where they're always in the shade. And so that was a smart way to have created that density, was to have more on the major highway, and then you graduate down to the neighborhoods. And it's unfortunate it didn't happen that way. But there are ways to get people to agree on things. And I want to point out, and this is a perfect example, is Bayshore Trace on Bayshore Boulevard. It has density, it's multifamily, but it's only 3 stories tall. And so what that means is you have less square footage per unit, which makes it naturally more affordable, even though it's not income-based. The Bay Oaks was replaced with Ritz-Carlton. The number of units was essentially the same, but we went from 2-story units with 3 dozen oak trees to 27 units with 2 oak trees. That is not the smart way to grow. I want everybody to please, what Stephen Benson presented in this, I want everybody to look at it again. We really need to get into the meat of that. One of the things that's driving up the costs and the overall problem is the fact that even though the household size is shrinking, the square footage of the units is increasing. And that's what's driving up the cost. If you take a 1,200 square foot home and you tear it down and you build a 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 square home, you still have the same number of units, but you've driven up the cost. We need to preserve this housing. We cannot build missing middle as fast as being bulldozed. If we're bulldozing the missing middle and replacing it with these larger homes that are not affordable, and that is conserving this stock of older, smaller homes is one of the pieces of the puzzle. So we need to be looking at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes public comment for this session. At this point, I'd like to recess for lunch until 2 o'clock. Is that all right? We're 1:45. So, and then we'll continue on, Mr. Drumgo. Mr. Drumgo, how many more sections do you have? Was it 3 more?
That's correct.
Okay, and then we'll have more public comment as well.
So if I may too,
Yes,
when we
sir.
return from lunch, can we look at how a possibility of like limiting the public comment to the content that we're presenting during that block? Because we're getting questions in various blocks,
Okay.
and so.
We'll talk about it when we get back, and
Thank you.
we'll
Thank you.
figure it out. We are in recess. Thank you.